Welcome to Classic Trials. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. In this series, we observe and analyze the play-by-play of some of the biggest trials that have shaped the public consciousness of the American judicial system. In this season, we're working our way through the case of California v. Erik and Lyle Menendez. Growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, and then Beverly Hills, California, these young men had everything they could ever want, or so it seemed, until one night on August 20th, 1989, they approached Jose and Kitty Menendez with newly purchased shotguns. Put on trial for murdering their own parents, they claimed self-defense, arguing they were terrorized in their own home by abusive parents until they could take no more. Which argument is more convincing? Come join and see for yourself. Hello, hello. Happy Monday. It's another Menendez Monday. Right, Holmes? Holmes, are you going to peek around? I think he might be understanding that there are no treats for him this time. Indy's in the other room. She might join us soon. So today, welcome everybody. Welcome, welcome. We have another week, another Monday, another episode of this first season of Classic Trials, where we're going through the Menendez trial from 1993, which is, of course, as if you have been following along with us, it's the first of the two trials. There have been two of them. One of them ended in a mistrial. Second one ended up with a conviction. Sorry to be spoiling that. If there are people that do not know the result, but we've basically been analyzing this to sort of see how did it end up where it ended up. And one of the interesting things to look at while we are working our way through this is every once in a while something pops up something pops up about this subject, where somebody has something that they want to say about the Menendez brothers or about the Menendez family. We heard, about the allegation from one of the singers from Menudo. He had his own allegation against Jose Menendez that is basically tracks along with what we have heard testimony about Erik and Lyle's childhood within their own family, having to do with abuse, SA in particular. And so now a few people sent me this. So I figured this is a good opportunity to do this, to talk about this. But Rosie O'Donnell put up a I was going to say TikTok. Rosie O'Donnell put up a TikTok about the Menendez brothers and about actually having a conversation with Lyle and with Lyle's wife. So this is a tweet from Perez Hilton. I think this is him reacting to it, but he's, it's just like he's not talking or anything. But anyway, so he says in this tweet here, I haven't seen this doc, but if all Rosie O'Donnell is saying is true, then I agree with her. So let's take a look at it real quick, and then we'll get into the actual testimony for today. I just think it's interesting because more and more people, every once in a while, it's like a little drip happens here and there, like that there's somebody that has something to say about the topic. Somebody else has something else to say about the topic. Of course, we many questions have been asked on the channel about their chances of having a retrial or some kind of a hearing on whether or not they can get released after the 30 years that they've spent in jail now, almost 30 years. But so this topic has been coming up from time to time, and it might be that it comes up with increasing frequency. So I can talk about it more and more, but let's actually watch the video of Rosie O'Donnell talking about it, because I think it's interesting.
Okay, so what do you think about the Menendez brothers? I got a little story to tell. In 1996, Lyle sent me a letter, basically said, I know you know, and I hoped we could connect. And he was right. I did know that they were innocent. I did know that those were boys who had been incested. And why I knew and how I knew, Lyle also knew. I didn't write him back because I felt afraid and I wasn't ready to touch the subject. And It was 1996. So now I see the new documentary where Roy Rosella from Menudo said that he too was sexually abused and raped by Jose Menendez, and that he bled rectally afterward. In 96, in the late 80s, people weren't ready to accept the fact that boys too get raped, sometimes by their fathers. And as a culture, we ridiculed them. Jokes about them on Saturday Night Live, jokes from Jay Leno every night. Everyone thought this was a funny target. Two kids who had been molested since the age of preschool, fighting back and standing up, and people thought they just wanted the money. They had the money. They didn't need the money. Money was not what it was about. So now it's 30 years later. I see the documentary and I leave a little TikTok and I get a phone call. It's Lyle's wife, Rebecca, and she wants to know if it would be okay if he called me. And I said yes, and he did. And we have been talking and sharing and becoming very close, and his wife is amazing, a 25-year relationship that they kept open and growing and thriving in those horrific circumstances. Both Lyle and Erik have amazing prison records with what they've done with their time and how they've spent their 30 plus years in jail. So we believe them now because of Roy from Menudo? Do we believe now because of the letter that Erik sent his cousin 8 months before the murder? Yeah, it's time. I believe them. They were horribly abused by their parents. They did the unthinkable, which had been done to them day after day after day. And they paid the price for that. The price would have been 10 years, each victim, plus possibly a gun charge, maybe 25, 27 years. They've been in longer than that. Free the Menendez brothers. Free the Menendez brothers. It's time.
Interesting. So, she's a little bit cryptic about what she knows and how she knows. That she says that, she didn't want to talk about it back in 1996. There are a number of reasons why she may not have wanted to talk about those kinds of subjects in 1996, because in the last couple of years alone, I feel like conversations have changed along these kinds of topics. So I'm not terribly surprised that someone would have known information or understood information and just not wanted to talk about it back in the mid 90s. So, but it's still, even here, she's being a little bit cryptic about like how, what she knows and how she knows. Like how she's so certain that this is something that actually, happened and whatnot. But obviously we have been going through the testimony so far from the cousins and aunts and other, coaches, and we're going to hear from teachers now too. We are going to be hearing from more and more people. And so far, in my opinion, I think that there's been a very compelling case put forward that they were in fact abused. And I don't know. It's hard to look at this case now through the lens of 1993 because things probably culturally have changed so much. But anyway, I thought that was really interesting to share, partly because a number of people had sent it to me. And it's gonna be interesting, to see what else comes from, from this kind of stuff. So, okay. Anyway, okay, let's get to, and also there was a trigger warning on the actual video itself, but I probably should have said something ahead of time, and I apologize. So for anyone that is needing a moment, take a moment. Take as much time as you need for your own mental health. For this, we are going to get into more. I don't know exactly what this testimony today is going to be, but I do know we've got in the description of this video, we've got the names of the witnesses here. So we're going to start with Stephen Mosner, who is one of Erik and Lyle's soccer coaches from when they were little. Then there's Jessica Goldsmith, who is a childhood friend. Her parents were good friends with Kitty and Jose. Then we've got Robert Clouse, Lyle's coach, Patricia Cross, Lyle's sixth grade history teacher at Princeton Day School, and then Faith Goldsmith, Kitty and Jose's close friend. So we're going to hear from all of these people, and it's going to be shorter than last week. Last week we heard from who was it? It was Marta Cano, one of the aunts of Erik and Lyle, so Jose's sister. That was like a very, very long episode because we wanted to get through all of her testimony in one sitting. So today is going to be quite a bit shorter than that one. If you guys missed it and you want to know, if you want to go back to last episode, Instagram is where I am doing weekly recaps for each one. It's like 2-minute video going over some of the most important stuff that we went over in the previous episode. So I didn't do it for the first like 20 episodes, but I've been doing that lately. So I've got the one from last week is up on Instagram. So if you are interested in that, if you can't watch the whole thing, head on over to Instagram, follow me there, watch all that stuff. So you can see it there pretty easily. Okay. Anyway, let's get going then. Let's get into the real meat and potatoes.
Stephen Mosner, Mosner.
Starting today with a mullet.
N-E-R, ma'am. Stephen with a P-H, S-T-E-P-H-E-N.
All right. Mr. Mosner, could you tell us where you reside, please?
I live in
They're bleeping out his address.
New Jersey.
And how long have you resided in New Jersey?
Since 1968.
And in the late 70s, were you a coach of a soccer team?
I was a coach from 72 to 87.
And what was the team you coached?
I coached several teams, but they were all for the Tom Hamnet's organization.
Right. And Your Honor, I've had marked as the next exhibits in order 3 photographs. Exhibit number 192 is a photograph which is labeled State Cup Champs 1977. 193 is also a photograph showing a photograph of Lyle Menendez. And 194 is another photograph of Lyle Menendez and his father.
All right, these are exhibits 192, 3, and 4.
Is that what you did?
Yes.
So showing you exhibit 192. Could you take a look at that and tell me whether you recognize the people who were depicted in that photograph?
Yes, sir. I coached all these boys.
Okay.
It's also a fun tie.
They were
Looks like some guy that's holding a flag, maybe?
1977.
Yes, sir. That was a year before I coached him.
And is that you in the photograph, or is that another?
No, it's not. That's a gentleman by the name of Stephen Grover.
And is one of the people in the photograph Lyle Menendez?
Yes, sir. Lower left-hand, far left-hand corner.
I'm pointing to it right there.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
That's correct.
And did you coach this same team the year following the year that's depicted in that?
Not exactly the same team. 85, 90% of them are members of my team.
Okay, I'm showing you 193. Is that a photograph which depicts Lyle Menendez at about the age when you met him as a coach?
He looks a bit younger there.
Okay. And is that the jersey he's wearing, the name of the team that you coached?
That was from the same organization, yes.
And showing you 194. Is that a photo of Lyle Menendez
Yep.
around the time that you coached him?
Yes, sir.
And do you recognize the jersey he's wearing there?
I don't really.
Okay. That would have been the same age.
Yes, sir. That would have been a house team photo there. I coached them both on a house team and an all-star team. The blue uniform was the all-star. The yellow is the house team.
Okay. And you see in the lower photograph there's someone in the photograph with Lyle Menendez. Is that someone you recognize?
The gentleman to his left?
Yes.
Yes, sir. That was his father.
And how much, if any, contact did you have with the father as you were coaching Lyle Menendez?
I saw him frequently. I had little direct contact with him.
What years, if you remember, did you coach Lyle Menendez?
I coach 11 and 12-year-old boys, so wherever that falls in.
So if he was born in 68, it would have been,
1980.
all right. And what was Lyle Menendez's behavior like on the field, on the soccer field?
He gave 125% at all times.
Would you describe what you mean by that?
Yeah, I used to have the boys, if they wanted a break, raise their hand and come out to take a rest. Lyle very infrequently raised his hands. At times he was tired and coughing out there, and I would ask him if he would want a break, and he would prefer to stay in the game.
In addition to playing soccer with you, did he appear to have a fairly busy schedule during the time that you knew him?
Extremely. He was often late for practices, often couldn't make tournaments and games. It was always a chore trying to arrange the team schedule so that he could be there.
Do you know what he was doing in the times when he would be late?
Oftentimes there were other lessons involved that took preference. Tennis, I believe, was the main one, but thinking back, swimming may have come in there, tutoring, trips. He just, as good as he played on the field, he wasn't always a member of the team because of his other priorities.
You said he gave 125% on the field. What was he like off the field, around the other boys that you were coaching?
He was usually in and out very quickly. The other boys liked him, but he didn't reciprocate towards them. He stuck to himself very often.
Did he mix with the other boys socially that were on the team?
Not really.
Was he pretty much a loner?
The word probably described him well then.
Now, you said you had some contact with his father. Is that right?
Well, his father would come to most of the games, and his father did show up at some practices.
And what was the father's behavior like in the presence of Lyle Menendez on the field?
Domineering. He spoke with an accent, and the one thing I remember, he would always yell, "Lyle, get the ball, get the ball."
Would that be in an encouraging voice or some other kind of voice?
Not really. At times, it wasn't even conducive to the team because I would like the players to play in position and not to leave their position to go after the ball. And he didn't always understand this. That I wanted the player in a certain spot on the field, not worried about where the ball was. But he had this repetitive term, "Lyle, get the ball, get the ball." And he would go up and down the sidelines.
And would he yell other things to Lyle besides get the ball?
I'm sure he did, but that's the one that stands out in my mind.
Did Mr. Menendez have any advice for you as the coach on how you should do your job?
I really didn't deal with him too much. I think he understood that I probably wasn't going to listen to him. But he did say one time, he came up to me and said something in reference to either Lyle's grandfather or his grandfather was a professional soccer player in Cuba, and that he knew a lot about the game because of that, and that he just felt like I got the feeling that he thought he knew more about soccer than I did, which he very well may have known, but I didn't deal with him.
Was he a nice guy to you, Mr. Menendez?
He was polite to me, and I never had any cross words with him.
And did you see him interact with his son, for instance, during half times or timeouts in the game?
Yes, I did, sir.
What would you observe in that regard?
Mr. Menendez was very competitive, and he expected his son to give everything he had and some.
Did you see him physically do anything in relation to Lyle Menendez during the halftime?
I did. He would right away when the whistle blew for the halftime, he would head right for Lyle. The team would come towards me. He would head for Lyle often with a towel. If it's cold out, we played in the winter, possibly some sweats, put them on him, dry him off. He actually, this is a little crude to say, but he actually treated Lyle almost like he was a thoroughbred racehorse, the way he would towel him down at halftime and after the game. But after the game, it was more of a quick thing to let's get you out of here as quick as possible. Often the players and the families would stay around, mill around for half an hour after the game, 45 minutes. But the Menendez family was out of there as quickly as possible.
And when you say he treated him like a racehorse, what do you mean by that?
I just mean it was more of a property than a son.
Objection sustained. The answer is correct.
Would there be times when the team would travel out of town?
Yes, sir.
And would Lyle Menendez always travel with the team, or would he get there by some other means of transportation?
At the time, I had a Volkswagen van that I used to pile the kids in, and Lyle, to my record, he may have gone with us once in the van. Usually his father would drive him.
His father would transport him to the games?
Yes, sir.
Did it seem like his father was treating him in a special way from the other players on the team?
I took it different. I took it that maybe his father didn't trust my driving. I can't answer why his father, but most of the other parents would go to the game.
Sustained.
And these times when you would see Mr. Menendez toweling Lyle Menendez down like a racehorse, did that happen on more than one occasion?
That happened quite often.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Examination on behalf of Erik Menendez.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Mr. Mosner, you coached Lyle Menendez when he was 11 and 12 years old. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And were the other boys on the various teams in which Lyle participated also 11 and 12 years old?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you said that Mr. Menendez often came to practices with his son. Is that correct?
I'm not going to say often. I'll say he came between 6 and 12 times.
Okay. During the times Mr. Menendez came to practices, would you ever see his other son, Erik?
Yes, ma'am. I'd say about a half a dozen times.
Okay. And would Erik accompany his father and his brother on the soccer practices?
He would come to the practice, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And approximately how old was Erik on these occasions when he came to the soccer practices with his father and his brother?
Erik was a couple years younger, but much less developed than the other boys at that time.
Okay. So Erik, you said you thought was a couple years younger than his brother?
I'd say at least 2, ma'am.
Okay. Could he have been 3 years younger than his brother?
I'm sure that's possible.
Okay. So that when you saw Erik, he was 8 or 9.
It's a good estimate.
Okay. Now, are there, in your experience as a coach, developmental differences between 8 and 9-year-olds and 11 and 12-year-olds?
Severe.
Okay. Are 8 and 9-year-olds smaller?
Much less.
And are they also not as muscular as the older boys?
Yes, often much slower also.
Kind of
What
leading
about
here at
their
this point.
skill level besides speed?
Nowhere near it.
Did Mr. Menendez ever make any concerning his son Erik when he would come and attend the practices?
Yes, he asked me on several occasions, anywhere from 3 to 6, Erik, if I minded if Erik practiced with the older boys.
Okay. And this was Mr. Menendez who made the request, not Erik, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I really never spoke to Erik.
Did Erik, in fact, participate in some practices with the older boys?
Yes, ma'am.
And did Erik try hard?
Tried as hard as anyone.
In your opinion, Mr. Mosner, was Erik evenly matched with the boys in Lyle's age group?
Seriously overmatched me.
What were your impressions, Mr. Mosner, of Erik on the field when he practiced with the older boys?
He tried hard, he played hard, but he physically couldn't stick up with them.
How long were these practices that Erik participated in?
Approximately an hour to 2 hours.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Mosner, you said that the Menendez brothers were busy. They had a busy schedule. Isn't that correct?
Rephrase the question, please.
Yeah, didn't you indicate that the brothers, or at least Lyle Menendez, was on a busy schedule?
Yes, sir, I did.
That he was often late for practice?
Yes, sir.
It was your understanding that he had other lessons to attend, for example, tennis and swimming lessons.
Other priorities.
And there was special tutoring, I think you testified to. Is that correct?
There was some type of tutoring going on. Whether
that-
it's special or not, I don't know.
Would that be academic tutoring or athletic?
I have no idea, sir.
But it was your understanding that they were on a busy schedule.
Yes, sir.
So they wouldn't hang around after the games. They would be off.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you said that you had some dealings with Mr. Menendez and you found him to be polite to you. Isn't that correct?
He was polite.
In fact, you considered him to be a nice guy who wanted the best for his boys. Wouldn't that be fair to say?
It appeared that way on the surface.
Ooh,
And you stated
That's
that
an answer.
he was concerned that his sons do well.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he was one of the few fathers that would come to practices. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you said that Jose Menendez at these half times would take a towel and dry off his son, would he also make sure that his son was warm and put him in sweatpants, sweat clothes?
Yes, sir. He would make sure he put on sweatpants both at halftime and after the game.
Did he appear to be proud of his sons?
Not really.
ooh, that's not the answer he expected.
It seemed like they could
There's
never
this-
do enough for him.
There's no question, Penny. Move to strike now.
Well, that was responsive.
All right, the objection overruled, the answer.
Yeah, he's completing an answer
He wanted
there.
his sons to do better. Would that be fair to say?
Nothing was good enough for him.
So this is an example of making sure that the question that you're asking is going to get the response that you actually want. It sounds like he was surprised by the response that he got. And then because he was surprised, there's that long pause where he probably was trying to catch himself, like, okay, what do I ask now? How do I recover from this? Or how do I try to pivot from this? And then meanwhile, the witness is thinking, oh, well, there's a gap of time. So I'm going to elaborate here that, like, how did he seem when Jose didn't seem to be proud of his sons? He always expected more of them. So Kuriyama tries to object by saying, like, hey, there was no question pending. But what the witness just said, it was related to his yes or no answer, which was related to the question that was previously asked. So this is just one of those times, and it's a long trial. So these kinds of things can totally happen, even to the best of attorneys. Not saying that these attorneys are terrible or wonderful, but that's just an example. It's just an example.
Did he tell you that?
No, sir, he didn't.
You gathered that from watching him towel his son down and put sweatpants on him?
Not just from that, just the general gist of him running up and down the sidelines. And I'm not going to use the word berate, but the kid was given everything he had all the time, and he always wanted more.
And when he would run up and down the sidelines and he would say, Lyle, get the ball, Would that be common for parents to cheer on their sons that you coached?
It wasn't in cheering mode.
Lyle get the ball is not.
It was
cheering mode?
It was much more frantic. It wasn't an encouraging tone.
Did you ever see any other parent get excited about his son playing on a soccer team that you coached?
Overall,
As soon as the fact Menendez was getting excited about the race.
rephrase the question, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Did you ever see any other parent run up and down the sidelines when the game was in progress?
Not run up. They usually had one position throughout the game.
So they would stay still.
They would stay basically still, yes, sir.
And Mr. Menendez was a little bit more active than any of the other parents. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Matter of fact, he made it usually a point to wear a sweatsuit to the games.
He would wear a sweatsuit?
Yes,
to the
sir.
games? Now, was he, did you indicate that he was about the only father that you saw come to the practices?
To come and to watch a practice and stay there for the whole time, yes, sir. Most parents would drop off their kids, ask me what time I thought I'd be done. They would come back. Sometimes they'd come back 10 minutes early, watch practice, talk amongst themselves.
But he'd spend the entire practice there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Nothing further. Thank you.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, sir. You may step down. You're excused.
Thank you.
Your next witness.
Okay.
My name is Jessica Goldsmith.
So short and sweet. Hi, Andy Bear. How are you? You coming to say hi to everyone? Okay, so yeah, that was short and sweet. We're gonna see a number of witnesses like this. It seems that there was an attempt at cross-examination here. It doesn't really stick much, in my opinion. But then again, as when we start to get deeper and deeper into a trial, I start to question myself at a certain point, because I don't want to be, or I want to at least have an understanding of like where my opinions come from. Is it because it just fits in with the narrative that has sort of started to form in my brain from the previous evidence? Or is it because, of my analysis of this particular witness performance in this little vignette right here on its own? But I mean, this last witness, he seemed pretty credible. I mean, there was nothing about his demeanor or the way that he said things that makes me really question the validity of what he said. I mean, his tone was the same across the board, whether it was on direct or on cross-examination. And so I believe that Jose was like this during the games, and that was unusual for a parent to act in the way that he did during these games. Okay. Anyway, next witness, another short and sweet one.
Goldsmith.
This is Jessica
Goldsmith.
Goldsmith.
How old are you?
24.
And do you know Lyle and Erik Menendez?
Yes, I do.
And how is it that you know them?
My parents were best friends with Mary Lou and Jose.
Now, Mary Lou Menendez and Jose Menendez,
Yes.
and Mary Lou, who's also known as Kitty.
Yes.
Your family knew her as Mary Lou, though. Is that correct?
We always called her Mary Lou.
And are you going to school now, or are you working? What are you doing?
I just finished my Master's of Social Work, and I'm a project director for the Epilepsy Foundation.
And are you nervous?
Very.
You said that your parents were best friends with Lyle and Erik's parents.
Mhm.
And do you remember a time when you met them, or did you know them all your life?
As long as I can remember, I've known them.
Okay. And do you remember when you saw them by the houses that they lived in?
Yes.
And when do you remember knowing?
In the house in Muncie.
At Muncie, New York?
Yes.
Does this house on the chart appear to be the Muncie house?
Yes, it is.
How often would you see them when they were living in Muncie?
At least once a week, if not more.
Would you see them in the evenings or weekends, or did it vary?
It varied. Evenings, holidays always.
What holidays did you spend with them?
We always spent Christmas and Hanukkah together.
And did you see them when they moved into New Jersey?
Yes, but not as frequently. We would still always see each other on Christmas.
So the majority of your contact would have been in the Muncie house. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, and they lived there from 1972 to 1977. When did you live in that area?
We moved the same time they did.
So you left New York around 1977?
Mhm.
Is that yes?
Yes, a few months after they did.
And do you remember what the age differential was between you and Lyle and Erik?
Yes, Erik is 1 year younger than I am, and Lyle is 1 year older.
And do you have a younger sister?
I have a sister who's a year younger than Erik. Then it's Erik, myself, Lyle, and my older sister.
Okay.
We're all 1 year apart.
And your older sister's name is
Fern.
And your younger sister's name is?
Joy.
And would all of you get together, the whole family, all the kids and both of the parents?
Yeah, always all together,
And do you remember playing with Lyle and Erik when you were young?
all the time.
And what do you remember about Lyle? What was he like as a young child?
We were always playing sports with him. He was great in sports, very, very dynamic, really charming and polite, even as a kid. He was very kind. He was protective of my sisters and I.
Now, you said you had a younger sister. Did he do something in particular with your younger sister?
Yeah,
I didn't hear the question. Let's have it read back, please.
Question now, you said you had a younger sister. Did you do something in particular with your younger sister?
Be more specific. Objection sustained.
Was the Menendez a family that valued winning?
very much, yes.
And when you played with Lyle and Erik, did you choose up teams?
We always had the same teams. Lyle and Joy would play against Fern, Erik, and myself. And Lyle would always say that Joy had to be on his team. Joy was really too little to play at the time. And he would always say that she had to be on his team because she was the best and he couldn't play without her. And it was just nice because she was really too young to play. And they always won.
Do you remember
sweet.
seeing the kids, not only seeing Lyle and Erik, not only in their home, but in stores and in other places outside the home?
Yes, I did.
Sustained. Sustained. The answer is stricken.
Did you have an opportunity to observe Lyle and Erik's behavior in their home?
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity to observe their behavior also outside the home?
Yes, we often went shopping with them or to restaurants with them.
And do you remember an incident when you were shopping with them in a shoe store?
Yes, I do.
If I can ask the next question.
All right. The objection is overruled.
How old were you?
We all still lived in New York, so I couldn't have been older than 8.
So that would have made Lyle 9 and Erik 7 at the
At
oldest.
the oldest.
And do you think it may have been younger, or do you think that?
It may have been.
And what happened in the shoe store?
Lyle and Erik were running around like they usually did, really, really rowdy. And I was just sitting on the bench. Our parents were there, and I wasn't allowed to run around with them.
Was Mary Lou there?
Yeah, Mary Lou and my mother were there. They were trying on shoes. And
Did Mary Lou do anything to stop them from running around?
no, she didn't seem to mind.
And did anybody get hurt?
Erik got hurt. When he was running around, he tripped and hit his head on the shoe rack, and he
Oh.
cut his head.
Oh my God.
And did his mother seem to be upset about that?
Not overly upset. I know he needed stitches. I remember my mother commenting that Mary Lou finished buying her shoes before we took him on to the hospital.
Now, was there a time when Lyle and Erik stayed at your house?
Yes, they did. They stayed with us for a week once.
Okay. Did you ever stay at their house without your parents?
No.
Was Mrs. Menendez an organized, calm person, or how would you describe her?
No, she was always late and always kind of rushing around, and everything was kind of always a mess.
Did it seem to be important what the public impression was of the family?
That was always very.
Objection sustained, the answer is stricken.
It's foundational, Your Honor, for the next question, if I may.
Well, you'll have to get to it.
Okay. Can you describe Erik for us?
Erik was always quiet and kind of gentle. He was very quiet. I always thought of him as a lot younger.
And you said that you were all a year apart in age, is that correct?
That's correct.
And were you also a year apart in school?
Well,
In the beginning, were you all a year apart in school?
in the beginning, we were all a year apart in school.
And then did something change?
Yeah, it was in the house in Pennington. I remember talking to Erik about school, and all of a sudden he was in the same grade as my little sister. And I knew he'd always been a grade above her, and I kept saying, "Of course you're not in that grade. You're a year below me." And he and Lyle were both saying no, that he'd always been in that class. And I was really confused. And on the way home, I asked my parents about it, and they said that I was correct, that Erik had been 1 year behind me, but that Mary Lou had mentioned possibly keeping him back because he wasn't a straight A student.
But
I
Lyle,
s-
but
I assume
Lyle,
that's what had happened.
but Lyle and Erik were both telling you that.
Yeah,
that
they
he'd
both kept telling
always
me that he was
been.
always in that class.
Was it important to be strong in that family, to be tough?
Definitely.
And how is it that you know that?
One time back in the Muncie house, I was with Lyle, and the way the house was set up there, they had a staircase going down like this, and then a landing, and then another staircase continuing, so that if you were up in their living room, you could look down over the landing.
So you, she just moved away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so if you were in the living room, you'd be looking down a flight of stairs, a landing, and another flight of stairs. Is that correct?
Correct. And Lyle was hanging from the living room over the stairs. He was hanging on like this.
About how old would he have been?
Again, it was in the New York house, so I guess he couldn't have been older than 9. And he got scared, and he asked his dad to take him down. And his father said, "No, you'll stay up there till you learn to be strong and learn to be a man." And Lyle started to cry. And I remembered it because I'd never seen him cry before that. And his father started to jab him in the stomach and say, "You'll stay up there till you learn not to cry."
And did he stay up there?
For a while, at least. I don't remember how he got down.
Was he crying?
Yes, he was.
What was his father doing while he was crying?
Just poking him in the stomach and saying, "You'll learn not to cry. You'll stay up there till you're not afraid and you'll be a man."
And where was his mother?
She was standing there next to me.
Did you feel that she was dominated by Jose?
Sustained.
Did she say anything to him like, let him down, he's crying, he's scared?
I don't remember her saying anything.
Okay. In observing them in other situations, did it seem that he had all the power in the family and she was afraid to say anything?
That's kind of a big question.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Was she a shy,
It's a
reserved
little vague.
person?
No. She was strong herself. She was very strong.
And did you ever see her say anything after that to Jose about what he had done to Lyle?
Oh, no, she didn't seem to mind it.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Yikes.
Examination on behalf of Erik Menendez.
Ms. Goldsmith, was Lyle, did Lyle appear to be important to Mr. and Mrs. Menendez?
Yes, he did.
Okay. What about Erik? How would you compare how important Erik was to them?
Well, they never really mentioned him quite as much. They talked about Lyle and his sports a lot. And I didn't even know that Erik was really such a big athlete until much later, because I never really heard them talk about it.
Okay. Did Erik seem to be as important in the family as Lyle?
Lyle stood out more, seemed to get more attention.
Okay. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Goldsmith, your parents were best friends with the Menendezes, is that right?
Yes, they were.
And how far away did you live from them?
In which house?
The Muncie house?
As I remember, not more than 15 minutes away.
And you would spend a lot of time over at the Menendez house playing with the defendants?
Yes.
How many times a week would you go over there and spend time?
It varied. It did vary. At least once a week we would be there.
This once a week, would you be there for several hours playing?
Yeah, we would go over in the evening sometimes. And we would play, I remember we would play soccer outside as it got dark.
So your parents would let you play outside with them as well?
Yes.
Now, how old were you when you used to go and play with the defendants in this case? What was the range in your age?
Well, like I said, as far back as I remember, we were friends with them, and I moved when I was 8, so from the time I was little until I was 8 years old.
Okay, I'm sorry, you did what when you were 8?
We moved out of the house when we were 8. We all moved out of New York. So until I was 8, I was playing with them.
So what he's going to be trying to do here is limit how much time she spent around them, or at least limit in the minds of the jury how much time she spent around the Menendezes. So, asking how many times a week did you actually spend time with them? How many hours would that be? So once a week, few hours, up until she was 8 years old. So that means that she was 8. I guess Lyle was 9. Erik was 7, something like that. So then, he's probably going to get into like, well, when's the last time you actually talked to them? When's the last time you actually spent any real time with them, to get at like, okay, yes, these are, even if you think that these experiences actually did happen, this was all a long time ago. It doesn't mean that these behaviors or tendencies, you could say, continued on over the last couple decades, or I guess last decade. Before the events of what happened here.
And then after that, we played occasionally still when we were older.
You would see them at Christmas time?
Yeah.
You would not see the defendants after you were 8 very often then?
Not too often. If they had a match near us, sometimes we would go.
At some point, did you learn of the deaths of the Menendez parents?
Yes, I did.
How long had it been that you had seen the defendants before, or at the time that you heard that Mr. and Mrs. Menendez were killed?
I hadn't seen them since the Christmas before they moved out to California.
Would that be 1985?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
So you didn't see them for the previous 4 years then?
Correct.
You didn't see them when they became adults?
Not after they moved to California, I didn't.
You said that Lyle was a dynamic person, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And that the defendants were rowdy when you would go to restaurants and shopping, they would misbehave?
Yes.
You'd run around, and would they yell and scream and carry on?
Yes, they would.
Would you say that they were kind of wild when they were that age?
They were very wild.
Now, at this shopping excursion, Mrs. Menendez actually had to take Erik Menendez to the hospital?
I believe so, because he got stitches.
Now, you indicated that it was important to be tough in the Menendez household. That'd be fair to say?
Yes, it would.
And there were only boys in that household.
Yes.
Correct? And you had 2 sisters?
Yes.
Now, you talked about the situation where Lyle was hanging from something.
Yes.
What was it that he was hanging from?
He was hanging the living room of the floor above. He was actually hanging from the ground from up there. It was sort of like a ledge, the best I could describe it.
Was he hanging in the stairwell or
Over the stairs.
over the stairs? So how many feet was he above the stairs?
A few feet above the stairs. I don't know exactly.
Okay. And his father said you can stay up there until you stop crying, because he started to cry?
Until you stop crying and learn not to be afraid, yes.
Okay. And how long were you there that night? Was that an evening that you went to visit?
I don't recall. The incident just sticks out in my mind. I don't recall how long I was there or why I was there.
At some point, you left that night, I take it.
That would be correct.
Was Lyle still hanging up there when you left?
No, he was not.
Okay, was his father there with him when he was hanging from the sledge?
Yes.
Okay, did you see him come down anyway?
I don't recall how he came down.
Okay, but he's only a couple feet above the stairs,
Yeah, but if he let go, he would have to fall down the stairs to get down.
unless he landed on a stair.
I guess he could have.
Okay, I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
So before that, Draco, Amy, why was he hanging? How old was he at this time? I think from her, if I remember, if I was paying proper attention, I think what she said was that he basically decided to hang there himself and then regretted it, and so was asking to be let down. And then that's when his father, I guess, came over and was like, "Nope, I'm going to poke you in the belly, and until you stop crying and learn how to be tough and strong." Essentially. So I think she said I don't know if she said exactly how old he was at the time. Let me see here. Yeah, I didn't catch his age, but I would say probably no older than 9, if I remember correctly. Okay.
Dangerous to be where he was hanging from?
Definitely, I would have been scared.
Thank you. Nothing further.
All right, thank you. You may step
Thank
down.
you.
You're
No
excused.
older
Your
than
next
9.
witness.
I think she said 8 or 9. Okay. Thank you.
All right, the balance of the testimony today only relates to the defendant Lyle Menendez. Is that right?
Well, we have another witness. What we're trying to say, we have several more witnesses, and Mr. Clouse needs to be out today, and he's sure to get, we have other witnesses. The other witnesses in front of us,
Well, you let me know how long you think the next witness will take.
15, 20 minutes is my guess.
All right, and then the next witness will take how long?
Half hour?
And that's before both juries?
Yes. Yes.
All right, we'll excuse the Erik Menendez jury then until tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And we'll start up with the Lyle Menendez jury and have his testimony.
Your Honor, we're suggesting that we think we actually.
Yeah, we'll do this the way I'm suggesting here, and we'll see the people for Erik Menendez tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't.
Sorry, I
form
didn't
any
even
opinions
notice that I
about it.
yawned.
And we'll see you here tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
I don't mean it.
Let me ask
I think
you,
I need
it's
to
been a
just
while.
learn how to breathe
See
more
some people
properly.
I'm anxious to go.
It's
I
like I
don't know
forget
why.
to breathe,
But,
and then I end up
Let me just ask
like,
here, have
having a
any of you
depletion of
seen or heard
CO2
anything
or
about this
something,
case
or
outside
too
of the
much
courtroom
CO2, I
since
should
the trial
say.
started, other than what you've already told me? Okay, then let's keep it that way. Don't discuss the case with anyone. Don't look at any of the news coverage or be exposed to anything, permit yourself to be exposed to anything outside of the courtroom. And we'll see you all back here tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Robert W. Clouse Jr., CLOUSC.
Mr. Clouse, do you know Lyle Menendez, who's seated here in front of me?
Yes, I do.
And when did you first meet him?
The summer of 1986.
And were you his coach for a period of time?
Yes, I was.
Until when?
Spring of 87, I think it was.
Can you sit closer to the microphone or speak up?
It's a little bit alien to me.
Okay.
Everyone is so uncomfortable with
Who hired you?
the process. It's so
Mr.
interesting to
Menendez,
see.
Jose Menendez hired me.
Are you a little nervous?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Can you tell?
I think it's interesting how many people have commented on how much they were like nervous to testify, which I think is just normal in any kind of a trial anyway. But this one being such a big trial that it was, I think that amplified things. And then also having cameras in the courtroom, but also I think because this was one of the first trials that was actually like nationally published, right? Like it was actually being recorded and sent into people's living rooms all around the country. And this is one of the first ones that actually was doing that. So I can see all of that being extra intimidating for all of these witnesses. So anyway, it's just interesting how many people have actually said that they were nervous.
tell?
Yes. Did you engage in negotiations for this work, or was it just a real straightforward type of situation where he hired you?
Well, I had to negotiate with him.
Did that seem to be part of the process?
Yes, it was very much so.
Okay. And how did you do in the negotiations?
Objection, calls for speculation.
Why don't you rephrase the question?
Okay. Did, after you had reached an agreement, did you find out that Mr. Menendez had a different interpretation of the agreement?
Objection made.
Overruled.
I'm sorry, can you say that again, please?
Yes. After you and Mr. Menendez had reached an agreement on your salary, your contract,
Yes.
did you find out that he had a different interpretation of what that contract was?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the difference?
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
The difference was it changed from weekly to a monthly,
And
or
did,
to a month.
okay, so you thought you were being paid by the week.
Mhm.
Is that yes?
Yes,
And he thought you were being paid by the month. Is that right?
we negotiated to that, yes.
And did you end up losing money?
Yes.
And did it seem that the money was the issue with him, or was there something
No,
else?
it did not.
Calls for speculation on the part of the witness.
Sustained. The answer stricken.
Could you tell from his behavior whether he cared about the money?
No,
Objection irrelevant.
Objection sustained. The answer stricken.
Did he appear to be a person to whom winning was important?
yes, very much so.
And did he have to win at everything?
Objection, calls for speculation. by
Sustained.
foundation.
Did it seem to be important to him to win even at contract negotiations?
Objection, calls for conclusion on the part of the witness.
Sustained.
Yeah,
It
it's
was
a
part
little
of
bit of
his
a broad
contract
question.
negotiation, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
Did he express to you pleasure at having gotten the better of you in the
Objection.
contract?
Irrelevant.
Overruled.
Did he?
Okay, can you please, this is going pretty fast for me.
Okay.
Well,
I'm
so
pretty,
far you haven't had answered too many questions. So you're doing okay.
I mean, I'm looking at this and it's like, we're playing ping pong or tennis.
Did Mr. Menendez express pleasure at having bested you at the negotiations?
Absolutely.
During the time that you were coaching Lyle, you said that this was summer of 86 to spring of 87. So he would have been 19 years old. Is that correct?
Yes.
And was Mr. Menendez in control of what was going on with regard to the coaching and Lyle's life?
Objection, calls for speculation. Any conclusion.
Sustained.
Did Mr. Menendez seem to be actively involved in what was happening with his son's life?
Objection, calls for speculation and lack of foundation.
What you saw of it.
Okay, can we have this one more time so I don't,
Yes.
I'm getting with this
Okay,
objection
Okay.
or.
He's getting
sort of
thrown off
breaking
by
up
the objections.
The rhythm of this.
I think that's the intention.
It's all right.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Was,
Yes, counsel's remark is stricken and
Yeah.
counsel's admonished not to say such things.
I apologize.
Whoa. Okay. Yes. She 100% right in what she said. She's accurate in what she said because, yeah, the opposing counsel is definitely trying to throw everything off, but there is legitimacy to the objection. So it would be improper to give the jury this impression that the opposing counsel is just, trying to game the system to, through gamesmanship win this trial when in fact there is some legitimacy behind these objections. But, the witness is getting flustered. That's another strategic win, you could say, for the prosecution, but that's not the primary purpose of these objections. But it is one of, I mean, it's like watching this. Yeah, I agree with the defense here, saying that is the intended purpose, is to get you all flustered and whatnot. But I don't agree with saying that in the open courtroom, and the judge is 100% right to admonish her for saying that.
Apologize, Your Honor. Did it appear that Mr. Menendez was making the decisions in Lyle's life?
Yes, very much so.
Where was Lyle living at the time you first met him? What city, state?
He was living in New Jersey.
And were his parents living in New Jersey?
No, not that time. Not
Do you
that
know
time.
where they were living?
They were supposed to be in Los Angeles, I think. From
Okay.
what I perceived.
And was Lyle living in a very large, beautiful
Yes.
home?
Yes,
Is this the Mountain Avenue home, the Princeton
Yes.
mansion?
yes, ma'am.
Was it furnished?
No, it wasn't.
Did it have electricity?
Kara,
Not to
I
my
agree.
knowledge when I was
It is
there.
it is surprising to see some spice coming
And
from her.
during the time that he was living in New Jersey and his parents were living in California, did it still appear that the parents were the ones making the decisions about his life?
Judgment calls for conclusion of psychological cause.
Sustained.
Did you, during this period of time, did you see the parents making the decisions about Lyle's life?
Well, at that time, all the decisions were made by Jose, or every major decision.
While you were coaching Lyle, did you get to know him?
Very much,
Did he play hard?
every time.
Did he play even when you didn't think he should?
Yes, he did.
Under what conditions did you think he shouldn't play and yet he did anyway?
Yes, this was the U.S. Pro Indoor pre-qualifying.
And why did you think he shouldn't play?
Well, he sprained his ankle, I think the day before,
Oh, jeez.
wearing boots, and I almost wanted to pull him out.
And he wouldn't let you?
Well, at that point, he said he wanted to play. So I went along with it.
Did he talk about his father to you?
About a little bit, yes.
Did he seem to be proud of his father or ashamed of his father? How did he speak of his father?
He seemed very proud of a lot of the things he has accomplished.
Okay. And did he talk about him as a weak man or a strong man?
No, never weak. Always very tough.
And would he talk about what Jose was like in business?
Yes, okay, sorry.
I'm not asking what he said, it's just
Right,
what,
the objection is overruled. The answer, yes, will stand.
Okay, so.
Wait, you answer the question.
okay.
I'm sorry.
So he talked about what his father was like in business, is that
Yes,
correct?
he has mentioned, yes.
Okay. And did he seem to have an impression of who his father was in business?
Yes.
Judgment calls for speculation on the conclusion.
Sustain the answer straight.
Did what he told you about his father have any effect on you with how you dealt with Jose Menendez?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustain.
Did you have an encounter with Jose Menendez which you later related to Lyle?
Yes,
You know what I'm talking about.
yes,
Was this encounter in February of 1987?
yes,
And did it take place at the Calabasas house?
yes,
Now, this is not the big house, but a smaller house the family lived in, is that right?
yes,
And were you over there for dinner?
yes,
Was Lyle there?
yes,
Was Mrs. Menendez there?
yes,
Was Erik there?
yes. And the ferret.
And the ferret. After dinner was over, did Mr. Menendez ask you to step away from the table?
Yes,
And did you do so?
yes,
And did he direct you to some particular location?
yes, we did walk to another room.
Did everybody else join you?
No.
Who else joined you?
Kitty followed.
Ooh,
And
that's creepy.
did Mr. Menendez then have a conversation with you which you later related to Lyle?
Later in April.
Okay. What was that conversation?
Okay.
Judgment calls for hearsay.
Did you wish to be heard?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may approach.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Mr. Clouse, I believe we're at the point where you said that you were directed into a room, went into a room, Mr. Menendez and Mrs. Menendez were there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you sit down?
No, we stood up.
And who did the talking?
Jose did the talking.
Of course.
Now, can you remember absolutely word for word what was said, or you just remember the general message that was
I
given?
got the gist.
Okay. And are there particular words that stand out in your mind, though, that were
Yes.
used? Okay. Now, with our apologies to the jury, I would like you to repeat now what it was Mr. Menendez said to you.
Hang on.
I can say this.
Okay. So based on the fact that she just said with apologies to the jury, something tells me what he's about to relay to the entire courtroom is not going to be PC or particularly comfortable for anyone. He's literally turning to the judge right now to say, I can say this. So I have no idea what it is that he's going to say. No clue. I haven't seen this, but it just prepare yourselves. It's probably already going to be demonetized, honestly, because of that the Rosie O'Donnell TikTok that we watched at the very beginning, anyway. But zero endorsements of whatever's being. I mean, I'm trying to like lay the foundation here. I have no idea what is going to be said. This is brand new for me. And I hope that it's not something that requires a trigger warning, but it just in case trigger warning. Yeah, Kit Kat, brace yourselves. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's watch. I am nervous. I am nervous. So, but okay. Maybe it's bigger in my head now than what it really is. Let's play.
I'm in the same boat as the jury. I don't know what it is you're going to say.
He's
until you
concerned
say it,
about
sir.
some of the language, Your Honor, so I'd like him to repeat what was said.
Well, if it makes you uncomfortable, then don't.
It doesn't make me feel uncomfortable.
All right, then.
I just don't know these people.
Okay, well, then, give us the gist without the specific words. Then.
Your Honor,
Feel
I'd like
uncomfortable.
him to use
All
the
right,
specific
first,
words.
Give us the gist.
Okay. He says, don't fuck with my son's future. Is that fucking perfectly clear?
Oh. Okay, so this is an example of like 1990s being much more proper than today, I think. So, yeah, we've heard the F word plenty of times on this channel. Okay, anyway, let's continue. I definitely thought that was gonna be. I was like, my brain was going to like the worst place possible.
And did he go into any detail about what that meant in terms of his future, what he was or wasn't to do?
Yes.
And what was that?
Tennis was just, I was babysitting now. As a babysitter for his tennis, he was going to go to Princeton. School starts and that's it.
And did he want you to not say particular things or not guide him in particular directions?
Well, at that point, I knew that it was changing. The whole idea was changing from tennis to he was going to school and I was going to be eventually terminated.
Now, the way that this discussion took place, was this a lighthearted discussion? Was he joking
Mr.
around?
Williams, that's a good point.
No, his eyes were on me. And,
Knowing this is
and I was
televised.
on his eyes and it was intimidating.
And after he said this, did you do anything? Did you look around or anything?
I did look at Kitty.
Why?
I was looking for some kind of a support or some kind of a help.
Okay.
And there was nothing. And that's when I started to say something and he put his hand up and that was it. I stopped.
How old were you at the time?
I was about 35.
Now, when he put his hand up, why didn't you just speak your piece?
I knew that was the end of the conversation.
But why wouldn't you just go ahead and explain what your views were?
I just felt that was it. No more to be said. Dismissed.
Okay. Did you later repeat this conversation to Lyle?
In April.
And why was it that you saw him in April? What was happening?
He flew to Florida to play a segment. It's a USTA segment, which is a professional tournament.
It has something to do with tennis, I take it?
Yes.
USTA is U.S. Tennis Association?
Yes.
And when you saw him, is that when you told him about the conversation?
Yes.
And how did he react? Did he say anything right then?
He didn't say anything right then. He just looked very sad, like all of a sudden. And I think he knew something. He knew something happened.
Objection moved to strike as he knew something happened as being speculation.
Objection sustained. That part of the answer is stricken.
So he looked very sad.
Yes.
Did he then go into play?
The next morning.
And what happened?
Something that I've never seen before or after.
How long have you been coaching?
20 years.
And what happened?
He played a person who we met in Australia, and he played him, and he was playing very tough. It was like 3-3 in the first set. He lost the first set.
When you say he, who
I'm
lost?
sorry, Lyle then lost the first set, and something very strange happened. He walked to the net and had a small conversation with his opponent and walked off the court. And his opponent then reported the scores as 6-3, 6-3. He only played one set.
Have you ever?
Never. Never.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Mr. Clouse. I believe you indicated that Lyle Menendez went to Australia.
Yes.
Was that on a tennis playing trip, do you know?
Yes.
Do you know how long before you met him that he'd gone on this trip to Australia? Or was it during the time that you knew him?
He went to Australia with me.
Oh, and when was that?
That was February of 87.
I believe you indicated then that you met or you started to coach Lyle Menendez in the summer of 1986, correct?
Correct.
And how many hours a week did you coach him, or did it vary?
It was pretty consistent.
And could you tell me how often?
We were training between 2 and 4 hours a day, 5 sometimes, maybe a 6th day.
So 2 to 4 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, correct?
Yes, correct.
And this was pursuant to a contract that you had, right?
Yes.
Okay. And who paid for it? Do you know who paid for your services?
Yes, Jose did.
Where did you play?
I belonged to an indoor club in Langhorne, and also on private courts. On private courts.
So I believe you indicated that in February of 1987 that you accompanied Lyle Menendez on a trip to Australia for the purpose of him playing tennis. Is that correct?
Correct.
And was that trip paid for by his father?
Yes.
Do you know how long you were in Australia?
Approximately 3 weeks, less than a month.
Okay, so 3 to 4 weeks.
Yes.
I believe you indicated that you had this conversation with Mr. Menendez that you've related to us in Calabasas. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. But were your coaching duties performed in the East Coast?
I also performed them out here.
Okay. How many times did you visit in California during this period of time between the summer of 86 and the spring of 87?
Well, I just came out here 2 weeks before we left for Australia. And then when I came back, before I flew back to Florida.
Okay, so you were out here the 2 weeks before the Australia trip and then a few days after the trip?
No, it was like within 1 day, I think I left.
After the Australia trip?
Yes, when I arrived back in March, I flew back, I think, within 24 hours.
Now that was then March of 87, correct?
Yes.
Did you continue to coach Lyle Menendez after that period of time?
Like I said, on the tournament when he came to Florida in April.
All right. Now, I believe that you've indicated that Mr. Menendez had this conversation with you and that it sounds like it upset you. Did it upset you?
More so later than at the point.
Okay. And then you repeated this conversation to Lyle Menendez right before he was going to play in the Florida tournament. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, when Mr. Menendez spoke to you, did he indicate to you that he wanted his son to attend Princeton University?
His son was going to attend.
And he was desirous of his son pursuing an academic career at Princeton. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Versus being a professional tennis player?
Versus yes.
Okay. And I believe you've indicated that sometime in April you went to Florida with Lyle, or you saw him?
I live in Florida.
Okay, and you saw him in Florida in April, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now, were you living in Florida when you were coaching Lyle
Yes.
Menendez in New Jersey?
Yes.
Okay, so were you exclusively dealing with Lyle Menendez at this time?
Not exclusively.
Did you have other students in New Jersey at that time?
Not in New Jersey and Pennsylvania.
Nearby?
Yes.
And when you told Lyle Menendez this information right before he started the tournament, did you think maybe it would upset his playing in the tournament?
Do I think it would upset him?
Yes.
There was concern for both of us.
Well, was there a reason you couldn't have waited until after the tournament?
No, ma'am.
Well,
No.
There's no way you could have waited till after to tell him?
I had a threat from his father. That was a threat.
Okay, and the threat was when? In February?
Yes.
And the tournament was in April.
Yes.
And between the threat in February and April, you hadn't said anything to Lyle Menendez about what his father had
No.
said. And was this threat that you got from his father before you went to Australia?
I'm sorry. Can you slow down, please?
Okay, all right. You said you got a threat from Mr. Menendez, is that correct?
In February.
Was that before or after the trip to Australia?
That was when the trip was finished in Australia. We came back to the house. That's when I got this threat.
So that would have been about March then, if you'd been gone 3 to 4 weeks.
No, I got the threat in February. I'm sorry, March, the first week of March, we came back. I got a yes in March, and then I went home to Florida.
And did you have any contact with Lyle Menendez between coming home from Australia and receiving this threat and the tournament in?
I got a phone call telling me he was wanted to come to Florida to play a tournament.
And did you speak to Lyle during that phone call? I believe you said he told me he wanted to come play the tournament.
Yes,
So that you spoke with Lyle
Yes.
then. Okay.
very
Now,
briefly.
When you told Lyle what had happened, what his father had said, I believe you indicated that he then went out the next day and basically forfeited the game. Is that what happened?
He played the tournament, and halfway through the tournament, he defaulted. Well, he didn't default.
He forfeited.
He didn't forfeit.
He left.
The match went in as 6-3, 6-3, which is a full match.
But he didn't play the entire match. Is that correct?
No, he didn't.
And did you see him after the match was over?
Yes.
Okay. Were you trying to make him lose the match?
Was I trying to make him lose?
Yes.
No, absolutely not.
When Mr. Menendez told you that you were just babysitting his son, did you think about quitting his employment?
At that time,
Yes.
I knew that I was being terminated at that time from coaching, from what I perceived as coaching.
But you did meet up with Lyle again in April of 1988.
Yes.
Or excuse me, 87.
Yes.
Okay. Were you employed at that time?
They were coming in for a tournament. I felt I was going to be babysitting. I had mixed emotions.
Did you get paid?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Any redirect?
Why did you feel it was necessary to communicate this threat to Lyle?
I felt threatened from Jose's threat that with my son, and is it perfectly clear? And my emotions were then, I felt I was never going to coach him again. And now I'm getting him to come to Florida for a tournament. And I thought, I can't coach the way I'd like to because I felt threatened. He's now,
Away from the mic a little
I'm
bit.
sorry.
Okay.
So I felt very threatened by this. And I knew I had to say something to Lyle because I didn't know what was going to happen. I had no idea what would happen to me or him.
Were you afraid for your safety?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you afraid for his safety?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Okay. I guess I can understand how he says that he felt threatened because of Jose's demeanor and his wealth and all of that. Sorry, I'm a little bit distracted because Holmes keeps like opening and closing the door. I don't know why he does this. He does this. He's too smart for his own good. He knows how to open it, and then he also knows how to close it, and he does both very, very freely and willingly. So anyway, I feel unsatisfied by his answer for why didn't he wait to tell Lyle about this threat from Jose until after the game, because that if I were Lyle, if I were, anyone that is about to perform, I that's something that will easily get in any athlete's head very, very quickly. And I mean, it's not surprising that he performed pretty poorly here. So yeah, I'm not quite satisfied by his responses with that. Even with this idea that this is a threat, and maybe it's just because I'm not understanding exactly what he means by it's saying that he felt threatened, and he said that he couldn't quite coach the way that he would like to under those circumstances because his brain was all fired up because of it. But Yeah, I don't know. All right, let's continue.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, sir. You may sit down. You're excused.
All right.
All right, we'll be in recess, ladies and gentlemen, until tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. Don't look at any of the news coverage or permit yourself to be exposed to anything about this case. And we'll see you all back here tomorrow at 9 o'clock. And the jurors are here in the case of People versus Lyle Menendez. Good morning to you all. And we're going to proceed at this point with a witness who is going to present fairly short testimony before you folks. And then after that, we'll take a short break. And then the next witness will be testifying before both juries. So at this time, the defense for Lyle Menendez may call their next witness.
Patricia Cross.
Tell us your full name and spell your last name. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Spell your last name.
Cross.
And what is your full name?
Patricia Norman Cross.
Okay. You may proceed.
Thank you. Could you tell us what you do for a living, please?
I'm a school teacher.
And how long have you been a school teacher?
I've lost count, somewhere in the region of 30 years.
30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And
She like instantly has like school teacher vibes right here, like elementary school teacher vibes. There's something about like the warmth. Like she probably is that kind of teacher that like greets every kid with like a hug as they're walking in. And yet she seems also at the same time very proper and strict. I don't know. I don't know how I got all of that in the first like 3 seconds of her just like saying her name and like saying what she does for a living. But for some reason, like I got all of that vibe.
And did you, for a certain period of your career, teach at a school called the Princeton Day School?
I still do, as a matter of fact.
And how long have you taught there?
15 years.
And when did you start teaching there?
In 1979.
And so you've taught there from 1979 to the present?
Exactly.
Do they all speak as you do at the Princeton Day School?
Actually, quite a few.
Okay. All right.
You're English, by the way, for the record.
Actually, I'm not. I'm American. But I obviously was born in England. I've been an American citizen since 1979.
I love it. As an American, I love it. I know we've got a lot of Brits in the chat and in the community that like to watch all of these also. So I don't know, but there's something about this that she's just like, actually, I'm American just like all of you. I don't know. There's something about that just is so charming to me.
What is the Princeton Day School? What kind of a school is it?
It's a highly competitive prep school which expects to send a very good percentage of its students to Ivy League colleges, and many parents send students to our school with that particular intent in mind.
And when you say it's highly competitive, is this a school that's also very expensive?
Yes, I don't think I could afford to send my children there. At the moment, the tuition is in the realm of $12,000 a year for day students.
And what do you teach exactly?
I teach history in the middle school, which means 5th through 8th grade.
And is there an upper school as well?
Yes, there is. That's 9th through 12th grade.
And do you know the defendant in this case, Lyle Menendez?
I taught him in 6th grade.
And was that in approximately 1979 to
Yes, it was in the year of 79 to 80.
Now, is part of your responsibility as a teacher, do you periodically throughout a school year make out written reports
Yes,
on
it
your
is.
students?
Yes, a way of communicating with the parents.
And these written reports go both to the student and to the parent?
No, it varies. They're written. Some people choose to write them more to the student. It's more usual to write them in the third person to the parent, referring to the student in the third person.
Right. And I've had marked as next in order, Your Honor, 2 pages of school records. That would be exhibit 195.
Based on what we've heard so far, my guess is that this student report is going to say something along the lines of he's showing in class that he doesn't understand the material. He hasn't grasped, what it is that we have learned in class, and he's falling behind all of his other students and his other peers. The reason why I say that is because we've heard testimony before about Kitty doing the homework for Lyle, Kitty also doing all of the graduation or the college application essays and stuff for Lyle. So that was like basically Kitty got into Princeton instead of Lyle. So my guess is that this report is about to not exactly talk about Lyle being a very good student.
5 for the course commission.
Let me just double check my records here. All right, 195.
And may I have a question with
Yes.
and showing you Exhibit 195. Do you recognize that document?
Yes, I do.
And could you tell the jury what that is?
These are a series of reports. The school year was divided into 3 terms, not 2 semesters, 3 terms. I don't quite know why, but that's how it was. And then halfway through each term, the student would receive what was called an interim report, or the parents would receive an interim report to let them know how the student was doing during the first, I suppose, 6 weeks of the first term. And then at the end of the term, there would be a term report, and this would be repeated then for the 3 terms during the year. And what I have in front of me here are the interim reports and the final term reports for each of the 3 terms.
And in total, there are 5 separate little reports on the 2 pages
Yes,
of paper
yes.
that you have there,
Yes.
all written by you. Is that
Absolutely.
correct?
Nobody can read it, but it's written by me.
All right. And the first report is written on October 14th, 1979,
That's
correct?
true.
And without going into the detail of that report, is it true that it's a negative report?
One could say that.
Boom. What did I say? By the way, I also see in the chat a lot of people talking about where her accent is from. I know folks, I think probably primarily in the UK, trying to pick up on what part of the UK her accent is from. Keep in mind, she also has been living in the United States for like over 30 years, it sounds like. So she may also have a little bit of a blend of accents between somewhere in the UK and parts of New Jersey. That could also have an impact. As a random aside, that reminds me of like, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger at this point actually has someone helping him retain his Austrian accent because he spent so much time in Los Angeles that it is very easy to drop an accent if you have been outside of that environment for a long time. I mean, my dad grew up in New York, but you would almost never know it by talking to him unless he gets very, very passionate about some kind of a topic and he goes like, oh, it's horrible, or something like that. Anyway, many random multiple side quests in what I am saying right now, but let's get back to it, to this absolutely delightful witness right now, who is talking about, as predicted, Lyle's not great grades.
And in fact, you underline certain
Yes, I did.
letters and words to emphasize that, in your view,
And I wrote them in block capital letters, yes.
and indicating that Lyle must be prepared for class. He must
hand in his assignments. You see, you can't read it either.
I can't, I'm sorry. And he must concentrate in class.
Yes.
Indicating he was having problems in those areas.
Yes.
And that report went to his parents, correct?
Yes.
And is it true that the next report is dated November 26, 1979?
Mm-hmm.
And again, you had some negative things to say in that report. Is that true?
Yes, with an encouraging final comment, like I'm hoping that things will improve and a little more effort for next term.
All right. And then the next one is January 20th, 1980, correct?
Yes.
And again, some criticism in that report. Is that true?
Yes, about inattentiveness in class, but I do say there has been an improvement.
And in the report dated November 26, 79, you actually give him a grade. Is that true?
Yes, that's because it was the end of the first term.
And you gave him a grade of 4B?
Yes. Princeton Day School has a very peculiar grading system, and I don't know if you want me to expound on that.
Well, just tell us whether that's a bad grade or a good
It's marginally bad. It's below average.
Now,
So
the next
basically,
report,
like,
which is on page 2, is dated March 1st,
C.
1980, correct?
Yes.
And you gave him an improved grade at that
Yes.
point.
Yes.
And also the report itself is improved with some minor criticism, correct? And the last report dated June 5th, 1980 is also has a grade of 3B, which is an improved grade.
Yes, and that's for the 3B for the term and 3 for the year, which means average.
And that report appears to be favorable, correct?
Yes, you have to understand at the end of the school year, you're trying to give the student a pat on the back and say this year's over, maybe thank goodness in some people's cases, and encouraging them to go on to next year on the right foot,
Now, the reports on the first page, I think you've established are fairly negative in tone.
Yes.
And the one that was written on March 1st, 1980 is more positive in tone. Is there something that happened between the writing of those first three reports and the writing of the report on March 1st?
Yes, there is.
And could you tell the jury what happened in terms of your interaction with either Lyle or his parents?
Rephrase the question.
Between the writing of the report in late 79 and the writing of the report in March of 1980, did you have a conference with Lyle Menendez's parents?
Yes, I did.
And was that conference held on what's called parent-teacher night?
Yes, it was.
Tell the jury what that is, please.
Halfway through the year, the parents come in for a conference, and I had a date. A date isn't exactly the right word. An appointment with Mr. and Mrs. Menendez. I'd been working at school all day, and they were late. The appointment, I think, was somewhere like 10:30 in the evening. They came in rather. I was leaving the building, as I remember, and they came in and accosted me. That would be a good word to use, I think, and asked me, excuse me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm actually talking to you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Next time she'll raise her hand.
Please. I'm sorry. Am I going on too much?
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Let
You'll
me,
ask another question.
Even the judge is like loving her. This is such a charismatic witness right here. Like just so affable, like everything, like it's just like you just like you can't help but like love this witness. So even the judge is like, yeah, even though I've been super harsh on like every witness for going over and talking for long and long and long, and going on for too long, and and I'll cut them off very harshly, but not you, ma'am. It's okay. It's okay. Like you went on a little long, but that's all right.
Let me ask you a question.
All right,
okay?
then I'll just answer it and not make the long answer.
I also feel like she probably is a very entertaining teacher too. Like she's I mean, part of this could also be that she's just used to having to keep the attention of sixth graders, which is what sixth grade is 12 years old, something like that. I think if I remember correctly, I might be wrong on that. Feel free to correct me on that, but like somewhere around there, which I mean, that could be kind of a challenging age to like keep kids' attention. So she's got a lot of okay, 11, that makes sense. So she's got a lot of experience in that. So, that also may be coming out now too.
Tell me what hours were set aside for the parent-teacher conference that evening?
As I remember, somewhere probably between, say, 7:30 and 10:30 in the evening, after a full day's teaching.
And had you been seeing other parents that evening?
Yes, I had.
And so you taught all day, and
Yes.
then you had to meet with parents of the
Right, and
students.
Mr. and Mrs. Menendez had the last appointment, and they were late, so I presume they were not coming. And then they arrived, and as I was saying, they accosted me.
All right.
Where do you think you're going, kind of thing.
And
Whoa.
where did they accost you? Were you in the class?
Outside the school.
So you actually were leaving
Yes.
the building,
Yes.
and were you heading for your car? Or for,
Yes, I was heading for my car.
And at that point, they accosted you?
Yes.
And
Jenny
what
Wallace
happened
could
right
totally
after
be.
they accosted you? Was there a conversation?
We then went back into the building, into the dining room where the conferences were taking place. And I mean, I didn't feel as if I had a whole lot of choice. I don't quite know whether I was intimidated, but I certainly had never been spoken to in all my years of teaching in the way that Mr. Menendez spoke to me. I felt I was a professional. I am a professional. I didn't think I should be treated that way.
Okay, let's get into it.
It's so interesting how everyone who has testified about their experiences with Jose and Kitty Menendez says about the same thing. It's almost like they're surprised at how intimidated they are of these two people, because they're like, I'm an adult, they're adults. Like the last one was 35 years old at the time that he had interacted with them, and yet he was very intimidated. Now this teacher, this very experienced teacher, also same thing. She's obviously a very confident, like intelligent, charming woman who could probably interact with, like, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of like the most unattractive, like a dead fish or something, like she could interact well with one. So it's like to see that all of these witnesses, hands down, are talking about how somehow their interactions ended up resulting in them kind of just acquiescing to what Jose in particular, but Kitty as well, would tell them to do, just because of propriety or something. I mean, essentially, they were bullies. That's what I'm getting at this point. Is that Jose and Kitty very clearly. I think we could very well establish this at this point in this trial, that Jose and Kitty, at the very least, were bullies. I mean, to like across the board to everyone. Abusive to Erik and Lyle, yes, I'm convinced of that. In that they were abusive in many ways, but I'm just it's pretty remarkable how every single person that had these interactions, that spanned very different types of interactions too, they all say the same things about Kitty and Jose. It's wild.
One question here.
I'm sorry.
Hold on. Another question.
Could you describe as succinctly as you can,
Sorry, Carl.
Mr. Menendez's tone of voice when he accosted you?
Belligerent, demanding.
And what was he demanding?
That I give him the conference that was his due, whatever the time.
And what was Mrs. Menendez's participation at that point?
Minimal.
Was she more or less in the background?
Yes.
And did Mr. Menendez prevail upon you to return to the classroom?
Of course.
At that point? And did you in fact sit down with him at that point and have a discussion?
Yes, I did.
And what did he want from you in terms of this parent?
I think he wanted me to appreciate the abilities of his son more than he perceived that I was.
Did he?
Excuse me, I moved to strike. I think that's the speculation on part of the witness.
Objection sustained. The answer straight.
Did Mr. Menendez discuss?
Does anybody want to bet that the jury has forgotten that answer, though, just because it's off the record? Like, if it fits with everything else that we've heard so far. Anyway.
With you the fact that you had written a negative report on his son.
Yes.
Did he indicate to you who was responsible for the low grade which you had given?
Oh, definitely.
His son. Who did he say was responsible for the low grade?
Me.
Did he say how you were responsible for?
No, I was his teacher and I should teach him, and I obviously hadn't done my job correctly. Otherwise, he wouldn't have got this low grade.
Wow.
And did he place this blame on you in a tactful way?
No.
How did he?
Well, I just came out and said it. My son can do better. You will make sure that he will.
And was this a request of you or a command?
No, not a request, a demand.
And how long did this conference last?
Oh, it was over as quickly as I could make it, probably 5 minutes, because I was anxious to leave.
And what were your impressions of the parents in terms of their demeanor as a result of having this conference?
As I said, I was flabbergasted.
Excuse me, move to strike the answer as her reaction was non-responsive, and it calls for conclusion.
March of 1980, that you were influenced by Mr. Menendez's belligerent behavior and the way you wrote that report.
Yes, yes.
How were you influenced?
I decided to back off and not to be as quite as tough as I might otherwise have been, but I decided I wasn't going to engage in any more confrontations or communication to avoid Mr. and Mrs. Menendez as much as I could. And that was a way of dealing with the problem.
Now, in your school, did the teachers talk about the parents and the students that they were teaching?
They were not supposed to, but of course they did.
And was it well known in your community of teachers that the Menendez parents were problem parents?
Yes.
Objection, excuse me, move to strike as being improper.
Reputation evidence.
352.
Well, is that the word that was used, problem parents?
Yes, we do talk about problem
Okay,
parents.
objection overruled. The answer will stand.
And were you scheduled to teach Lyle Menendez again in the 8th grade?
Yes, I was.
Did something happen to prevent you from teaching him?
Yes, it did.
What happened?
Lyle appeared on my class roster, and then I was called into the head's office, who said the Menendez parents have requested for you not to teach Lyle in 8th grade because there was a personality conflict.
And so you never taught-
Presumably between, I don't know whether it was between me and Lyle or between me and, in their perception, between me and Lyle.
And so you didn't teach him in the
I was
8th grade.
delighted not to.
Thank you very much.
Cross-examination.
Mrs. Cross?
Yes.
Did you have only one contact with the Menendez parents?
As a twosome, yes, I had contact with Mrs. Menendez on other occasions.
Your contacts with Mrs. Menendez, were those after this contact described for the
Yes.
jury?
Yes.
And were those contacts with Mrs. Menendez equally as unpleasant?
No.
And did she attend scheduled conferences with you?
No, it wasn't. It was an occasion of driving to a school trip where she drove me for about 2 hours in her car. It was more of a
Was she being
social
reckless?
occasion, you could say.
All right.
know.
And where did she drive you?
From Princeton Day School to Great Gorge Ski Area.
And how was her driving?
Fine.
And all right, when Mrs. Menendez, you had your contact with her then, was
Okay.
she pleasant to you?
Totally pleasant.
Different than what we've heard
And I believe
elsewhere,
you've
but okay.
indicated that you wrote 5 reports for Lyle Menendez while he was your student, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And I believe the last 2 to 3 reports indicate some improvement.
Yes, that's true.
Was that accurate or not?
It's very difficult for me to remember in absolute detail what I was feeling about a particular student in the year 1979 to 1980. I can only go on, what I wrote down here and say, yes, it must have been accurate.
All right, so you wouldn't have given Lyle Menendez a grade that he didn't deserve just because his father yelled at you, would you?
No, I think that's very doubtful. I think I may have said something in the comment, as was indicated a minute ago, but I don't think that's a $64,000 question for any teacher. Are you influenced by the parents? And there's an ambivalence on that answer.
Well, let me just ask you this. What were the grade ranges? Was it 1 through?
1 through 6.
Tell in the hand.
All right, and originally
Can you
you've given him a
imagine?
4B.
Yes, that was when he was brand new, had never been to PDS before, didn't know the expectations, and was having a hard time.
Okay, did he improve during the course?
Yes, he did.
All right, so if you indicated in your report that he improved,
Uh-huh.
that was accurate.
Yes, I will say it is.
And if there were 6 grades possible, you rated him a 4 and then raised it to a 3,
That's correct.
with 1 being the best.
1 was so superior that hardly anybody ever got it.
All
It's
right.
like an A+.
All right, so the traditional excellent score would have been a 2.
Exactly. An average score would be a 3, and below average would be a 4.
And what's a 5?
A 5, we never used it. In the middle school, no. The idea was nurturing and helping, building skills, this kind of thing. So it was really only a 4-point grade.
All right, and
Okay.
so
basically
and so
he was
between
failing.
did you legitimately raise his grade from a 4 to a 3? I guess that's my question.
I think I did.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yes, just briefly, this contact you had with Mrs. Menendez,
Yes.
was that the only other contact that you met her?
Yes.
And you never had any other contact with Mr. Menendez?
None.
And when you went on this trip with Mrs. Menendez, her husband wasn't with her in the car, was she? Was he?
Oh, no, he was not.
And Lyle Menendez was not in the car?
No, he went on the ski trip on the school bus.
So it was just the two of you in
Yes.
the car?
Yes.
All right. And you didn't mean to suggest you were changing grades as a result of some bad conflict you had with the parents?
No, I didn't change the grade. That was, I tried to be, but I just remember distinctly being intimidated, and I especially remember this incident. I mean, you have so many students and so many parents to deal with. I don't remember them all, but I do remember that incident very, very clearly.
Thank you.
Didn't require much digging at all.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
All right.
Nothing further.
All right. Thank you. You may
Thank
step
you.
down. You're excused.
Thank you very much.
All right, next witness.
Would you tell us your full name and spell your last name?
Faith Goldsmith, Goldsmith.
This is gonna be Jessica's mother.
Okay. Let's see if we can move that microphone a little bit adjusted for her.
So earlier we heard from Jessica Goldsmith. Now this is Faith Goldsmith. I don't know for a fact,
Thank
but I
you.
think this is probably Jessica's mother.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Mrs. Goldsmith, were you friends with Mr. and Mrs. Menendez?
Yes, I was.
And you knew her as Mary Lou, is that correct?
Right.
And you knew him as?
Jose.
And do you know their two children, Lyle and Erik?
Yes, I do.
Were Mr. and Mrs. Menendez very good friends of yours?
They were very dear friends.
Were they among your closest friends?
Yes, they were.
And to
Thank you,
your
Aunt
knowledge, were you their closest friends?
To my knowledge, yes, we were very close friends.
When did you first get to know them?
I met Mary Lou when she started teaching in the Bronx, where I taught. I would say it was probably 1965, 1966.
And did you continue to have contact with her and her family over the next period of time?
Yes.
Until when?
We were in very close contact with them until we moved to Jersey. We moved to Jersey at about the same time they did. We remained in contact, but less frequently.
Okay.
When they moved to California, we had very little contact with them.
Let's deal with the early years, when you first were teaching together. Did either of you have children at that time?
No.
And during that period of time before you had children, how often would you see Mr. and Mrs. Menendez?
I would see Mary Lou every day, and we spent most of the weekend with, as a couple, my husband and I spent a good part of the weekend together.
And to be clear, yeah, I see Draco Amy in the chat, and I would imagine other people have this question too, because this is the first time we've heard this name, Mary Lou. This is apparently Kitty. I guess her real name is Mary Lou. First time, or maybe they've mentioned it before in this trial, but just completely forgot until Jessica had testified earlier, and she was like referring to her as Mary Lou, and I was like, who, the what? But apparently Kitty is a nickname for her, but her real name is, I mean, it makes sense. Kitty doesn't sound like a real name. So Mary Lou is Kitty. Kitty is Mary Lou. They are one and the same.
Once you had children, did you continue to spend time together?
There was a period of about a year when Mary Lou and Jose lived in Chicago. We did not see them at that time. When they moved back to New York to the Muncie home, we then saw them again frequently.
And when you say frequently, did you see them every week?
Several times a week. Mary Lou and the children several times a week. Jose on weekends. Not every weekend, but frequently.
Were you in their home?
Yes.
Frequently?
Very frequently, yes.
And were they in your home?
Yes.
And did you go places with them?
Yes.
With both Mr. and Menendez and the children, or more with just Mrs. Menendez and the children?
Mostly with Mary Lou and the children, my children and her children.
And then at some point you moved from New York?
Yes, we moved to New Jersey.
And approximately when was that?
1978.
And did they move around the same time?
I believe they moved about 6 months before we did.
And when you were both living in New Jersey, how often did you see each other then?
We saw each other less frequently. And as the years went on, it was less and less frequently. We did see each other. It was our tradition to see each other every Christmas. We always spent Christmas together.
Did you spend Hanukkah together also?
When we lived in New York, we did, yes.
And were you there for birthdays, or did they come to your house for your children's birthdays, or do you recall?
I remember when the children were younger, they're coming to our house for birthdays. I remember one birthday for Erik that we were there.
But other than that, you did not go to Erik and Lyle's birthdays that you recall?
Not that I can recall.
You said when you met her, when you met Mrs. Menendez, you were both teaching. Is that
Right.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
And are you still teaching?
Yes, I am.
How long have you been teaching?
I returned to teaching about 8 years ago. I had stopped to raise my children, and I returned about 8 years ago.
And what level do you teach?
5th grade.
And have you always have you always taught?
No, not allowed.
Have you always taught 5th grade?
No, I taught 3rd grade, as did Mary Lou in the Bronx.
Considering all that we have heard about Kitty so far, can you imagine her being a 3rd grade teacher? That does not sound like the personality for someone who should be a third grade teacher. Maybe that's why she didn't last very long in that profession. I mean, that, and maybe she, that was just the decision when she married Jose and they had kids and whatnot. And she just, decided not to go back to teaching. But she does not seem like the kind of person that is particularly warm and encouraging of very young minds and young bodies, not in a healthy way. So wild to think of that.
Now, did you, were you around when the children were small? Were you seeing each other during that period of time?
Yes.
Who had a child first, you or Mary Lou?
I did. Fern is 6 months older than Lyle.
And I believe your daughter testified yesterday, and she indicated the children are all 1 year apart, yours, theirs,
Right.
yours, theirs.
Starting with Joy and ending with Fern and the others in between.
Okay.
Fair. I am seeing a number of people in the chat now talking about what terrible teachers they had in elementary school. So okay, fair. They're not all good. I guess I was just thinking like ideal people to be teachers. Anyway, okay. Regardless, let's move on.
And you had 3 girls.
Yes.
When
Also, hey, AV Short Clips, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you for these classic trial streams. Helps with the Monday blues in a boring office job. Well, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for joining us and for watching as we make our way through this extensive trial in tiny little pieces. And thank you so much for the super chat. That's so kind and very generous of you. Thank you.
Lyle was born, did Mary Lou stay home with him, or did she return to work?
No, she returned to work very soon after Lyle was born.
Within 4 or 5 weeks, something like that?
I'm going to say 6 weeks, but that's what I would say, 6 weeks.
Okay. And on weekends, would Mary Lou and Jose stay home with their baby, or did they do
No,
something else?
they decided to take up skiing, and they would bring the boys to Jose's mother.
The boys now.
Oh, wait, okay. I refer to them as Lyle and Erik. They would bring Lyle and Erik to Jose.
Was this before Erik was born, or is
Oh, no, just Lyle, just Lyle. They would bring Lyle to Mrs. Menendez. She lived in Jersey, and they would leave Lyle there Friday evening and then pick him up Sunday on the way back.
So she had childcare during the week while she was teaching,
Yes,
and then they would be gone on the weekend skiing?
yes.
And was that virtually every weekend?
It was very frequently, obviously during the skiing season.
Okay. Is very frequently to you once every 2 or 3 months, or almost every weekend?
Almost every weekend, to the best of my recollection.
Okay.
So this is also trying to put ourselves back in the mindset of early 90s. I wonder who's on the jury here, if there are any moms that are like stay-at-home moms. They're going to be very judgy about this. Today, less of an issue. More and more moms now work. outside the home for money. I should finish that sentence so that people don't think that I'm making any kind of judgment about mothers that decide to stay at home, particularly when you start to have multiple children. And trust me, I don't have any kids of my own, but I have seen it, family and friends, and I know that the stresses are there. They are massive, and the choice to work or stay at home is a very personal one, and it is a very fact-based decision. Okay, so with that aside, looking at this right here, what they are trying to do probably is communicate this back to the people on the jury. I'm curious if any of them are mothers that stay at home, that decided to forego a career in order to be a mother, or if they are traditionally minded, fathers here. They may be very judgy about Kitty deciding to get childcare, and then also on the weekends, saying like, I'm not going to spend time with my new baby. I'm going to go skiing and drop him off at my mother-in-law's house, while my husband and I go skiing. So it's interesting. I definitely feel this getting layered on kind of thick, for better or for worse, however you feel about it. But it just seems to be a dynamic here that is at play in this 1993 trial.
And did she have a discussion with you with regard to the child care situation?
Yes, she did.
And can you tell me what that was?
And your response?
You're on this. You want to hear, or do you want it at the sidebar?
All right, let's go to the sidebar. All right, you may re-ask the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you have a discussion with Mary Lou with regard to what she wanted to do about the child care situation for her young son?
Yes.
And Lyle was born in January, is that correct?
Yes.
So this would have been when he was just an infant, is that correct?
To the best of my recollection, yes.
Okay. And what was her proposal with regard to child care for Lyle?
She said that it didn't seem to make sense to, the arrangement that they had did not seem to make sense to her, in that she was gone a good part of the day when she was working, would just come home and see Lyle in the evening, and it was very hectic coming home after work and taking care of him. She thought it would be a better arrangement to have Lyle stay with his grandmother, and that she and Jose could visit him Friday en route to skiing, and then Sunday en route home. And she wanted to know what I thought about that.
So basically this is regardless of, what I just said of somebody who decides to work, decides to be a stay-at-home mom. What she just said here is like it basically saying, I don't have time to see my child in the evening. The mothers that I know that are working mothers typically feel very, 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 very emotional about wanting to be a very good mother, and then also wanting to be a very good employee, or whatever it is that they do at their work for income. And that stress turns into like feeling like you're good at neither. And so this is like, that dynamic is not there at all. So, and we do know that she did tell Marta Cano last week. We saw this with Marta Cano's testimony, that she told Marta in front of Erik and Lyle, I wish I never had these boys. I wish they had never been born because they ruined my marriage with my husband. So this is just confirmation of the fact that Kitty was, a reluctant mother, or an unwilling mother, I suppose. But she definitely seems like she was not in this role to actually want to be a mother. And I would suspect that there are some people in the courtroom that feel a certain type of way about that.
And what'd you tell her you thought about that?
I told her I thought it was an awful idea.
And did Jose have any input on this?
She told me Jose thought it was an awful idea.
So I take it that Lyle did not go then to his grandmother's. Is that correct?
Correct.
Was Mary Lou a timid kind of person, shy, or was she something else?
Absolutely not timid nor shy.
Was she fearless?
very fearless.
Did you see incidents in which you could tell that she was a very brave or courageous person?
Yes, I did.
And was this something you admired?
Yes, I admired it.
Okay. And can you tell me what you saw that led you to believe that she was fearless?
There was one incident where she and I had taken our children to a museum in New York. And at one point, there was some sort of a show in the basement of the museum. And there were maybe 50 or 75 other people in the museum in that basement. And somebody threw a couple of fire bombs into the room. And everybody drew back and just, what do we do? And then it was Mary Lou that ran up and grabbed the fire bombs and stamped on them, and then started screaming at the people that had thrown it in.
Okay.
I mean, and just everyone was amazed that someone had that courage to go up and do that.
Okay. And was there another incident involving her car while she was teaching?
Yes.
Vegas, Tom.
Can you tell me about what year we're talking about?
And by the way, Kit Kat, thank you so much for gifting one Legalbytes membership. And to CJ Drake, welcome to Bite Club. I think you may have been in Bite Club before, in which case, welcome back to Bite Club. And hope to see you on Friday for our members only casual Friday live stream.
I stopped teaching in the Bronx in 1967, so somewhere before 1967.
When did you first meet her?
That's 65 or 66.
Okay, so that's the time period we're talking about, somewhere between 65
right,
and 67.
right.
Okay.
I don't know exactly. We were at,
This is 1965, 66.
Yes, this is just character evidence. I believe it's a very brief incident, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
You said that you saw her as being fearless. Did you see that same character trait translate into her as a parent?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
And do you consider yourself a protective mother?
Objection relevant.
Sustained.
Was Mary Lou a protective mother?
No,
And did you see specific things that led you to believe that she was not a protective mother?
yes.
And can you tell me what things you saw that led you to believe that she wasn't protective?
There were many incidents that I could recall. There was one incident, their house in Muncie had a porch with a railing, and it had a thin railing. And
Excuse me, I have a photograph here, which we previously marked as 154. Does that appear to be the Muncie railing?
certainly, yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and it has that narrow ledge there.
Okay, how high up on the ground was that?
I really don't know how high off the ground it was. I have no measurement that I could come to. I know that Lyle was walking on this ledge, and I screamed out to Mary Lou to get him down. It seemed to me that if he were to fall, he could hurt himself, and that the ledge was too narrow for him to be walking on. And she just said, he's not going to fall. He doesn't fall when he walks on the ground, and he's not going to fall on the ledge.
Now, how old would Lyle have been at that time?
5. That's a guess, really.
Okay. And was there another incident where he was walking near a culvert?
Objection, this is leading into
Rule.
Should I answer the question?
Uh-huh.
I have a vague recollection of Lyle again walking where there was a deep drop. And in this particular incident, my husband Peter, who is less protective than I, said to Mary Lou, get him off of there. He can really hurt himself if he falls. And she just said he's not going to fall. and let him go on.
Were there any incidents that come to mind with regard to, well, let me strike that if I may. Was it important to Mary Lou and to Jose that their children be tough?
I certainly got that impression, yes.
And was there an incident you saw with regard to Lyle and a swim class that demonstrated that?
Especially Vegas.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Vegas time.
If you can be more precise as to when.
Okay. Do you remember an incident with the swim class with Lyle?
Yes, I do.
And about how old was he at that time?
It was the first swim lesson that he had. He was involved, and my daughter Fern and Jessica. I would say that he was maybe 6 years old. I'm going to guess at that age.
Okay. And what happened with that incident?
Our class was scheduled the first thing in the morning, and the pool was cold, and when they went in, Lyle came out crying, and he said he didn't want to go in because the water was too cold. And Mary Lou just said, you have to go in. And he kept trying to come out, and she kept pushing him back in. Said, you'll get used to it.
And did the coach seem to think that this was appropriate behavior? Or?
Objection, false or speculation.
Sustained.
Did the coach make some comments to Mary Lou to which she responded?
Yes.
Okay. And what did the coach say?
The coach said to stop pushing him. She said, what do you want to do, raise a champion? And Mary Lou said, yes, of course.
Was there an incident with Erik in a real estate office which reflected a lack of caring or protectiveness?
Yes.
Objection, Vegas time.
All right, I'm sure you'll specify that.
Yes. How old was Erik at this time?
It was when they were looking for the Muncie home. So do we know what year they moved into the home in Muncie? And then
if Erik was born in 1970 and they moved into Muncie in 1972.
Then Erik was 2 years old. At the time, we were in a realtor's office, their family and my family, and the office was located on Route 59, which is a major street, major highway almost. And we were talking to the realtor, and somebody came carrying Erik in, and they had to stop the traffic. He had been out on Route 59.
And
had wandered off onto the street.
How did Mary Lou react to that? Did she seem distraught or upset?
No.
Was there an incident involving Erik and the cemetery when he was quite young?
Yes.
How old would he have been?
I'm not certain.
Less than 10?
I would think so.
Okay, and what was the incident with the cemetery?
Jose had taken Lyle and Erik to a cemetery when it was dark.
What?
And then on some signal, apparently, he and Lyle ran out of the cemetery and left Erik there. And Erik was crying, and they wouldn't go back and take him out for a while.
What? What? That's creepy as shit. Jesus Christ.
And was there any explanation given for why this would have been good behavior, good parenting?
Jose said that Erik had to learn not to be afraid.
Oh my God.
Did you see times when Lyle and Erik got hurt, physically hurt? Where they had injuries?
Yes. Erik, we were once in a shoe store, and Erik fell and cut I think it was around over here, and he had to get stitches.
And how did Mary Lou react to that?
She was not upset about it. The shoe clerk and I were urging her to have it seen by a doctor because we thought it needed stitches.
She finished buying her
She
shoes?
finished buying her shoes.
Yeah, so we heard about this from Jessica earlier too.
Was success, the children's success and the parents' success important in that family?
Yes, very important.
And was there an incident with regard to Erik and the class he was in that demonstrated that to you?
I would also, before she answers this question, at this point, I would like to know why the Goldsmiths were friends with the Menendez family. Like, was there some sort of like business relationship that her husband had with Jose that made it like, like, hey, these guys, there's a lot of bullshit happening in this family that we don't really like, but like, we kind of have to maintain some sort of connection here because it's good for career or good for business. Because I feel like otherwise, why be friends with these people who are just nasty, terrible people overall and to their own children? And like, maybe they'll go over it at some point, but hey.
Was Erik held back?
Mary Lou asked me several times. Mary Lou told me several times that she thought that she should hold Erik back because he wasn't at the top of his class. And she wanted to know my opinion about that. I kept telling her that I didn't think being at the top of the class was
irrelevant as to what you thought.
Sustained.
Okay. So Mary Lou was concerned that Erik was not at the top of his class.
right.
Did she say what she was thinking about doing about that?
She wanted to hold him back. She felt that if he were older, he could do better.
And at some point, did you discover that Erik was in the same grade as the daughter that you have who's a year younger than him?
Yes, and yes.
And did you talk to her about that?
Well, she had mentioned, we were just sort of reviewing, it was the start of the year perhaps, and we were just saying, this child's in 5th grade, this child's in 6th grade. And when I mentioned the grade that Erik was in, she said, no, what are you talking about? He's in, and I believe it was 6th grade. And I said, no, he's a year ahead of Joy. That's not possible. And she said, he was always in the same grade as Joy. They were always in the same class. And I just dropped it at that, realizing that she had followed through on her plan to keep him back.
Wow. And then she denied it to you?
Yes.
That's bizarre too. Like, to just like, hi, we've been friends forever. Our kids, we both have been tracking our children's progress in school every single year. It's natural that each year they go up a grade level, but like, no, you're mistaken. My kid's always been in your kid's grade this entire time. My kid was never one grade ahead. That's just like bizarre how she thinks that like people wouldn't notice that. It's so bizarre. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's so much about this. It's just so much about this. It's just wild.
Did she contact you before? Did she contact you at some point in time to see if you could get some placement tests for the boys?
To get some standardized tests that the boys were going to be taking.
Now what were these tests?
I don't remember whether they were the CAT tests or the MET tests, but they're tests that are often used to help place a child in a particular class, whether it be a fast-moving class or a slow-moving class.
And did she explain to you why she wanted those tests?
She wanted to make sure that they would do well.
And did you get those tests for her?
No, I did not.
Why not?
Strictly irrelevant.
Was it illegal to get those tests?
I don't know.
Was there some reason why she asked you for those tests rather than getting them herself?
Objection calls for speculation.
It's not speculative, she can say. She knows that only she.
Unless it was said by Mrs. Menendez.
Did Mrs. Menendez ask you specifically to get some tests?
Yes, she did.
And did she indicate that she couldn't get them herself?
Yes, it's because I had my New Jersey certification and she did not. She told me that if you had a New Jersey certification, you could get these tests.
This is a teaching certification?
Yes.
And I believe you said you didn't get the
I
test?
did not get them for her.
Why?
In other words, Kitty wanted access to these standardized tests so that she could bubble in all the right answers for her two sons to make sure that they had good standardized test scores. This is just like beyond insane. Like the level to which she went to like maintain a certain image. I'm like I'm I'm like losing my composure at this point because it's just so bizarre to me that someone would care that much about something as meaningless as image like that, and instead being like, well, these outside results are an indication of the fact that there's a problem and there's a way to solve it by actually addressing the problem rather than just like faking a new image. It's just insane.
Was Mary Lou an affectionate, demonstrative mother?
No, she was not.
You said that winning was important in that family, succeeding. Did she demonstrate that in terms of anything about food, what the kids were to eat?
There was one period of time that Mary Lou told me that she was giving Lyle and Erik high protein breakfasts of steak or fish. And I don't remember now whether it was because it was going to improve their athletic ability or their academic ability, but she had read somewhere that a high protein diet would help them. So they had this for breakfast.
Because it was geared to their performance, she
Yes.
believed? Were you aware of what their schedule was, the boys' schedule, in terms of during the period of time they were playing tennis?
At different times, I was.
Okay. And were there periods when they were getting up very early in the morning to play tennis before school?
There was a period of time, to the best of my knowledge, that they were getting up at about 5 and playing, coaching in tennis. Somehow, I think it was in Philadelphia, before school, and then would come to school, and then after school would get tennis lessons, I believe, in New Brunswick.
Did they seem to have unstructured time where they could just go hang out with the kids in the neighborhood, or did they have a different life?
They did not, all of their time was structured, and Mary Lou specifically said that it would be unwise for them to have friends, that it would take too much time away from the things that were important. And she would say that if they became friends, they would lose the competitive edge in tennis if they had to play against a friend.
So it was better for them to have no friends?
At this time in their life, she said when they were older and in college, it would be time for them to make friends.
Did you ever drive with Mary Lou?
Yes.
Was that an exciting experience?
It was often frightening. She drove 85, 90 miles, if the road permitted it. She went as fast as she could, recklessly.
Was there an incident in which she had two of her nieces, Kathy and Diane, visiting with her, and you made a trip to Washington or to New York?
We went from New York to Washington, yes.
And did you drive with them on that occasion?
Yes.
And is there anything memorable about that drive?
We just seemed, at 85 miles an hour, I just stopped looking at the speedometer. It was just frightening. It was very frightening.
Did you think that that Mary Lou and Jose were the kind of people that behind what they'd say behind your back, they'd say to your face, or did they seem to have two different standards of behavior? What they would do, how they would talk about somebody. Can I finish the question? Thank you. How they would talk about somebody privately versus how they would behave toward them in a public setting.
If you could rephrase the question in light of her own observations.
Okay. Did you specifically have the opportunity to hear how either Mary Lou or Jose or both talked about Lyle's girlfriend, Jamie?
Ooh.
Yes.
Spill
Yes,
the
they
tea.
were both displeased that Lyle was seeing Jamie. They didn't think that she was an appropriate girlfriend for him.
Were they mildly critical or very critical?
Very critical.
And then did you have an opportunity to see them with Jamie?
Yes, I did on one occasion.
Okay. And how did Mary Lou behave toward Jamie when she saw her in person?
I saw them they were leaving New Jersey and flying back. They were already living in California and had come into New Jersey. I don't remember for what reason, but they were saying goodbye.
Could you sort of give us an idea what year this was?
It was the year that they moved to California. It was just
They moved in 1986. Does that help?
1986.
Okay.
And when they were leaving, Mary Lou kissed Jamie and hugged her goodbye.
Had you ever seen her kiss or hug her own son?
Not that I can remember.
Were Mary Lou and Jose competitive?
Extremely competitive.
Did you ever know anybody in your life who was more competitive?
Never. No, they were the most competitive people I've met.
And of the two of them, who was the most competitive? Or were they on a par?
They were both extremely competitive.
Okay.
Very competitive.
Were they both tough?
Very tough. Mary Lou was an extremely strong, tough, self-confident, powerful person.
More so even than him, maybe?
Sometimes more so than Jose, yes.
Okay. And was one of the ways that you observed their competitive spirit in the games that you would play when your families got together? Monopoly, bridge, that type of thing?
Yes.
And was winning important to them?
Winning was very important. They cheated, and especially Mary Lou would cheat, whether it be at Monopoly, whatever, she would cheat. They were going to teach us to play bridge. Peter and I did not know how to play bridge, so we had 4 open hands. And Mary Lou was cheating, and I kept telling her that it was ridiculous for her to be cheating at a game that didn't matter. We were just learning. But she was cheating.
And what would happen when you would call her on the cheating? Would she admit to it, or
No.
she would deny it?
Yeah.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Examination on behalf of Erik Menendez.
No, you're not.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Ron.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. If I may. I'm sorry.
Mrs. Goldsmith, your families spent a lot of time together. Did you ever let the Menendez parents take care of your children?
No, I never did. I just never felt that it would have been Mary Lou. And I never felt that she would have watched them carefully. And she often asked me, because I would watch her children, sometimes just for a couple of hours, one time for a week when they went away on a business trip. And she often would say, "You'll watch my boys, how come you leave your girls with me?" And I just made excuses. I would not have felt comfortable leaving my children with her.
Why?
She was reckless?
Just was not
careful.
She didn't seem to be aware of keeping an eye on them.
Based on her, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Should I answer? She did
this
not
is not speculative
watch
at
them
all.
carefully. I knew that if they were there, they would be free to do almost anything. There would be nobody watching them. And at a certain age, I felt the children had to be watched.
Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Ron.
Ms. Goldsmith, why were you friends with Mary Lou?
Yeah, good
I
question.
loved Mary Lou, and we had good times together. She was bright, interesting conversations. She was a good friend. She was a fun person to be with.
Whoa.
Was she a sweet lady?
Very.
Now, you said you first met her in 1965, was that it?
I believe I said 65 or 66.
And you indicated that you were both teaching in the Bronx in New York,
Yes,
and you both taught the third grade.
correct.
Was Mary Lou, or Kitty, as she was also known, was she married to Jose at that time?
Yes, she was.
And during this period of time, was Jose going to school?
Yes, he was.
So you knew them before they had become successful, or Mr. Menendez had become a successful businessman.
That's correct.
And you and your husband, Peter, were, as you stated, very dear friends of the Menendezes?
Yes.
You said that you would see Mary Lou Menendez every day at school, and you would even spend the weekends with with Mr. and Mrs. Menendez, with your husband.
That's correct.
Okay. Did you have classrooms right next door to each other?
Diagonally across, very close to each other.
Did you
yes.
have lunch with her?
I'm sure I did, though I don't recall it, but I'm sure we did.
And was your husband a teacher also?
No, he's not.
Okay. What did your husband do at that time?
He's a manufacturer's representative.
During that period of time?
Yes,
And he became close friends with Jose Menendez.
very close friends.
They were like brothers.
Yes.
Now, Jose, during that period of time, what was he like?
Could you be more specific?
Yes, during the time that Jose, before the children were born, any of the children, both yours and the Menendezes, you indicated that Jose was going to school
Yes.
and that you and your family would spend a lot of time with the Menendezes. What was Mr. Menendez like during that period of time?
He was a fun person to be with. He was bright. He was fun. He was always a fun person to be with. You were always laughing when you were with him.
Did he have a good sense of humor?
Excellent sense of humor.
Now, when the children came, first of all, you had a daughter,
Correct.
correct? Was that in 1967?
Correct.
And then the Menendezes had their son, Lyle, in January of 1968.
I believe that's correct.
Now, Mrs. Menendez was working just shortly before Lyle was born, correct?
Yes.
And had you worked with her from about 1965 until 1968 when they
No.
had Lyle Menendez?
No, I stopped working in May of 1967.
That's when you had your daughter.
Correct.
And Mrs. Menendez continued to work?
Correct.
And did she work right up to the time when she had Lyle Menendez?
Short. She stopped working, I imagine, shortly before.
And after she had Lyle Menendez, you indicated that she went back to work after about 6 weeks?
I
that right?
said I thought it was about that amount of time.
Now, was Jose Menendez still going to school at this time, going to college?
I believe it was either shortly before or shortly after Lyle was born that he graduated and started working.
Now, when Jose Menendez was going to school, he was working part-time at Waldbaum's, is that right?
Correct.
What is that?
Supermarket.
So he's working part-time as what?
In the office.
And he was an accounting major? They weren't wealthy, were they, at that time?
No, they were not.
And Mrs. Menendez had to work. I mean, she had
Yes,
to.
she did.
You didn't hold it against her that she had to go to work and have a babysitter sit her son during that period of time, did you?
No, I probably felt sorry that she had to do that.
But yet she went out and she earned a living.
Yes, she did.
Now, during this period of time, when she was working, you had indicated that they took up, she and Jose took up skiing,
Correct.
and they would bring Lyle to the grandmother's house. Is that
Correct.
Maria Menendez?
Yes,
And that they would take Lyle to the grandmother's house and ski and then come back on Sunday
correct.
for the weekend?
Correct.
And this happened fairly regularly, is that right? During the skiing season?
Yes.
During the winter? Did they do that? Did they leave on trips like that on the weekends in the off season when it wasn't skiing season? Or
Not that I know of.
they'd spend time with their son during the weekends then, and you would spend time with their family during those weekends.
At that time, they were living in New York. And we were already living in Rockland County. We saw them far less frequently, so I'm not really aware of what they were doing on the weekends.
Okay. Now, at some point after Erik Menendez was born, did you have a lot of contact with the family during that period of time?
I believe Erik was born, I believe, and they moved to Chicago very shortly thereafter. We did not see them when they were in Chicago. So from about the time that he was born until he was 2, we did not have contact with them. When they moved back to New York, then we did.
So there was about, a 2-year period that you did not see the Menendezes after Lyle was born?
After Erik was born.
And after Erik was born. And then, was it about 1972 that you saw them again?
If that was the year that they moved back to Muncie, I've lost track of the time here.
So you remember the Muncie house?
Yes.
And the photograph that you looked at with the little ledge, was that the Muncie house?
Yes.
Showing what's remarked is Exhibit 154. Is this the porch area to the Muncie house?
It looks as if it is, yes.
There appears to be a little bench just above the planter. Is that the ledge you're talking about?
No, I was talking about this ledge here.
Okay. Appears to be a little chipmunk or something on that ledge.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes.
And that ledge is a little bit higher than the chair that's to the left side of the photograph. Is that right?
Over here.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And you're afraid that young Lyle might fall off that ledge?
No, going down, can I just
Yes.
see the picture again? Not that he would fall down this way, but that he would fall down the other way down, and there was somewhat of a drop going this way.
Okay.
Here, there's not much of a drop.
Right.
It's
So
the
there's
other way.
plants on the other side.
I don't know if there was at that time. I don't know.
Now, Lyle Menendez at that time was how old? You say he was about 5 or 6?
That was my guess.
I mean, it seems what he's getting at here is he's trying to point out, like, this ledge isn't quite so scary. You just were overly, worried or whatever about Lyle at the time, and it's really not that tall. You can see there's this chair over here. There's this, like, squirrel or ground squirrel or whatever it was, on there to sort of like talk about like reference or whatever. But she's basically saying, like, well, that's this side, but he could have fallen off the other side. I was worried about. And also he was very young. So I don't know. It's when it comes to cross-examination, I mean, I've talked about this so many times before, particularly, especially when it comes to like your average lay witness. I like it to be snappy, right? Like get in, get out, make your point, and make it lightning fast, because as soon as things start to feel like they're dragging, the jury has been listening to the original story anyway from this witness. So when it starts to feel like it's repeating itself and it's just sort of dragging, they start counting the tiles on the ceiling, so to speak, or like, looking at what's everybody wearing in the courtroom, or, like all of these things. And I'm kind of feeling this way during this cross-examination, is that it feels like I'm, I'm having to spend some energy focusing on what exactly it is that he is saying and trying to get across. And yes, I have noticed in the chat as well, he is being given some latitude to really get into some depth here on this, that the judge seems to have been a bit more impatient in the past with other witnesses, but maybe he's just in a good mood after Miss Cross, Patricia Cross earlier. Maybe that just put him in her testimony just put him in such a good mood that he's willing to sort of sit back for a little bit. I don't know.
Did he fall off that ledge? Did you
No.
see him the day that you were worried and Mrs. Menendez said, don't worry, he's not going to fall?
No, he did not fall.
In fact, they were very athletic young boys.
Yes, they
Very
were.
rambunctious,
Yes, they were.
very noisy and wild.
Yes.
Now, and you had sweet girls, correct?
They were sweet boys. They were sweet girls. I mean,
But they weren't athletes. Your girls
they're
weren't.
not athletes.
And Mrs. Menendez said, don't worry, he's not going to fall. And he didn't fall, did he?
Correct.
A little bit of a sexist undertone there, but okay. All right.
Would it be fair to say that Kitty Menendez spent most of her time driving her sons to various lessons and to school?
Yes.
She spent the whole day from early morning until nighttime driving her sons to and from lessons and to and from school. That'd be fair to say?
Well, not when they were in school, obviously.
Pardon me?
Not when they were in school, obviously. You said all day.
Yes.
It would be after school mostly.
Wouldn't she get up before 5 o'clock to take her? I believe you said that the sons would take lessons from about 5 in the morning,
At one period of time, yes.
and you were personally aware of that period of time.
She told me that she was doing that.
And
This was when they were living in Jersey, I believe.
she personally got up and took her son to his lessons.
Yes.
And were you told that she took her sons to these lessons and sports events from morning until night? She had to drive around town?
Yes.
That she had to go from Princeton to New Brunswick before school?
After school.
Before school to take Lyle to his lessons, tennis lessons?
No, she went to New Brunswick after school.
Were there times that they would practice? I believe you indicated that they practiced before school.
Yes, but the way I understood it, the way Mary Lou told it to me, they were going to Philadelphia, I believe it was, before school, and New Brunswick after school.
Okay. So they would go from Princeton to Philadelphia?
I believe so.
That would be the 5 o'clock tennis lesson?
Yes.
How far is that?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Also, by the way, it's wild that they put so much time and effort into the tennis lessons for Erik and Lyle, to the extent that there was no time to actually do any homework or actually learn any of the things that they were supposed to be learning in school. So Kitty would end up doing all of their homework for at the end of all of that, as we heard earlier today, for Jose to just tell Lyle's final coach, you're just babysitting him until he starts Princeton. All of that. And it's just like, done. No more tennis. Lyle, the decision has been made for the rest of your life. You are no longer going to be playing tennis after you have given all of your body for this time and again. Just crazy. I can start to understand, not to say that I am, condoning one way or another, but I can start to at least understand from an outsider's perspective how Lyle and Erik would start to feel like their lives are just not their own, even as they are young adults at the point that they decided to take, the lives of their parents here. It's crazy.
But that's from Princeton, New Jersey to another state? I mean, it had to be, you have no idea?
I have no idea.
Okay. Did she indicate to you that after she would go from Princeton to Philadelphia, that she would have to go back to Princeton to pick up her other son and take him to school?
No.
You don't recall that?
Are you saying from New Jersey to Philadelphia?
Right, and then back to Princeton to take her son to school?
No.
And it was your understanding that she had to take her sons to practice after school as well?
Yes.
Now, when Jose was home and he interacted with you and your husband, Peter, and your family, did he appear to be relaxed around you?
Very relaxed, yes.
He had known you and your husband and had been friends with you for years, and he was comfortable?
Yes.
When the sons came, when the two defendants were born, did the focus turn on the sons as far as the attention?
Yes.
Sustain the answer, Frank.
At some point, did Mr. and Mrs. Menendez focus almost their entire attention on their sons?
Yes.
Okay, when was that?
I would say that when they started to join the soccer team or the swimming team, which must have been about age 7, somewhere around then.
And did Jose always tell you that he wanted the best for his boys?
Yes.
And did he kid around with you that it was better to have boys than girls?
Yes.
Was he a good?
Maybe he wouldn't have been able to do the things that he was able to do with his boys because of culture or something. There are like a number of reasons why Jose may have thought that. Just saying.
Father at that time?
He was certainly spent a lot of time with the children, yes.
When he would come home from work, would he hug and kiss his young boys?
I was not often there when he came home at that time.
But did you see that?
I saw him hug and kiss his boys.
Did Jose tell you that the most important thing to him was the boys?
Yes.
Did they try to instill in their sons that they should be the best they could be?
Yes.
And likewise, did Mary Lou tell you that she wanted her boys to have the best and to achieve?
Yes.
Now, you had indicated that you had a lot of fun when you were with Mary Lou.
Yes.
And she had a way of making you feel good about yourself.
Yes.
And making you feel that you could do anything.
Yes.
Now, with regard to the swimming lesson that you said that you were present for, where Lyle Menendez came out and said it was too cold, and Mrs. Menendez said, go back in. Remember that incident?
Yes.
Did the coach tell Mrs. Menendez that Lyle would never be an Olympic swimmer? Do you remember that incident?
Could you repeat that?
Yes, that incident that you referred to, or you testified to earlier. You said that Lyle Menendez was in the pool and it was cold, and he came out and said it was too cold, and Mary Lou told him to go back in, that he would get used to the cold water.
Yes.
And you had indicated that the coach said, what are you trying to do, make him a champion?
Right.
Wasn't it the coach's statement that Lyle would never be an Olympic swimmer?
I don't recall that.
Would it refresh your recollection to take a look at a report?
I would object to that, no, that's not adequate foundation.
Is this, the same conversation?
Yes, Your Honor, it does.
Show the witness the report.
The objection is the identification.
All right. Why don't you identify what the report is?
Just one moment.
This is all time where the focus of the jury is able to be completely lost by what you are doing. The ideal situation in a case like this or a situation like this is every question that you have. I mean, I've done this where I have helped to prep a case for trial where you have all of your questions on direct or all of your questions on cross-examination, and maybe you don't have, there are different styles of going about it, but generally speaking, you want to make sure that everything that you're asking, what the answer is going to be for it. And if you anticipate a challenge to a particular question, or even if you don't, let's say a witness just doesn't remember something that that they've said before, you need to know where to get that information during the trial to keep the trial moving. It's just you got to keep things snappy, because otherwise by the time you get that information right here, this paperwork that he's sort of scanning through to find the part right there, you want to have it down to the page and line number so that you know exactly where to go to get that, to make it as fast as possible. Because by the time you get that answer from the witness to the question that you asked several minutes ago, does the jury remember the question? I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember. It's something to do with swimming, and the coach saying something about Lyle being an Olympic champion one of these days or something. Does it matter? I don't know. That's the other part too. Is it feels like a small point to be digging for this long for. I am getting a little bit bothered by this today.
It's page 3 of the November 16th, 1991 statement. Interview with Faith and Peter Goldsmith. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Second paragraph on this page 3 of November 16th, 1991 interview.
To whom was I speaking?
This is a defense interview. I'm not sure who you spoke to. Do you remember interviewing with the defense on November 16th, 1991?
Yes.
All right. Where am I supposed to be
Right here,
looking?
second paragraph.
What is the question that you want me to answer?
Does that
See?
refresh your recollection of that incident?
See, boom, exactly. It takes so long that she's like, what are we doing here? Oh, it's so frustrating.
Yes, I believe it's the same impression is given that the swimming teacher was saying he's not going to be a champ. Whether she used the word champion or Olympic swimmer, it was the idea that Mary Lou said, yes, he will be. That's what I'm working towards. And whether the words were Olympic swimmer or champion, I guess I can't be 100% certain, but that was the idea.
Okay. So when the instructor
That was like the most pointless endeavor because it's basically the same thing that she said on direct. And the thing is, if the jury comes to that conclusion during this point right here, then they're going to be like, okay, so you clearly don't have much to go over then. So I'm going to check out and look over here and think about other things. Maybe I'm going to figure out what I'm going to have for lunch today. Like it's get in, get out, get your point across, try to come out unscathed. I don't understand the strategy on this cross-examination.
instructor had told Mary Lou that her son Lyle would not be a champion or would not be an Olympic swimmer, Kitty or Mary Lou indicated that was the wrong kind of attitude to have that her sons could achieve. That'd be fair to say?
That would be fair to say, yes.
And she was a bit annoyed at the attitude of the swimming coach that she said in front of her son that he wouldn't be a champion.
Correct.
Okay. And relative to that, you had indicated that even for yourself, that Mary Lou Menendez would make you feel like you could do anything. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
She had a way of encouraging people?
Correct.
Okay. Now, with regard to the drive.
And Aaron Berner, these are really good questions. Is that something that has evolved over time through trial and error or made easier with better technology, or are these lawyers just unorganized? I have no idea. I don't know the answer to that question. I would like to hear an answer to a question like that from someone who has been practicing since back then, because I mean, methods change over time. Technology definitely can change how we do things in the courtroom as well. I mean, we saw that, we've seen that with trials coming out of the pandemic, right? Because how many trials had to be put on over Zoom? Like that's would have been entirely unheard of in 1993, right? Like I don't know that anyone would have perceived that possibility. I mean, unless you really are thinking as like a futurist or something like that. But all I know is that I was taught from the beginning, like best practices is like you want to have things as tight as possible because attention spans are short. And it is absolutely crucial that the information that you want to get out into the courtroom is actually being looked at by the jury. So I don't know. I don't know how much of that. It could be a blend of both, but it's such a good question.
Driving. You indicated that you went from New York to Washington, D.C. and
oh my gosh. And also Martha W. I was a juror last week and the attorneys on both sides were like, this fortunately was only 1.5 days. I am so sorry. It's rough. And to be fair, like it's a high standard to say like everything needs to be organized in its own little box, make everything as smooth as possible. Like that's the ideal. To say like what are trials like on an everyday basis, I don't know, maybe more of them are a little bit more disorganized, right? But when it's a big one, it's a super big trial that the whole nation is watching. If I'm an attorney on the case, I am super duper pressurized to make everything as organized and smooth as possible. I don't know. That's me.
Mrs. Menendez drove quite fast.
Correct.
Did she teach you how to drive?
No.
Did you have fun driving with her?
Did I have fun?
Yes.
I don't know if I understand the question.
Okay, did you indicate that you like to drive with her and like to follow her places? Did you ever say that?
Did I like to follow her places?
Yes.
I'm not sure. I don't remember saying I like to follow her.
But did you like to drive with her? Go places with her?
I like to go places with her, yes.
It's such a confusing question.
Was there a situation where Jose Menendez wanted Mary Lou to be baptized?
Not that I know of.
Would it refresh your recollection to take a look at the same report, page 5?
Yeah, I would object that that's like still irrelevant.
Yes, Your Honor.
Resume. Mr. Kuriyama?
Thank you, Your Honor.
One second. And yeah, no, Courtney placed it. I definitely understand that what he wants to get at is, that she wasn't didn't drive like a crazy person. But the problem with that is that this witness has already testified that Kitty was a reckless driver. So he's never going to be able to get from her, no, she wasn't a reckless driver, because she literally just said that on direct. So I don't understand him like trying to go there unless he's like, he asks it in a way that's like, well, she may have driven a bit on the edge, but did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy, going, I don't know, but like I don't know. It's confusing. And the thing is, if it's going to be that confusing in the execution of it, just don't go there. Just don't go there. It's not as important of a point as a lot of these other things that this witness has talked about on her direct examination, that like when it comes to cross-examination, you really need to focus your cross-examination on the points that are absolutely crucial, where they have taken points from your side, like where you need to rehabilitate these things. Because otherwise, if you try to go into literally every single thing, it can also communicate to the jury, this witness on direct did a lot of damage to our case, and I'm just trying to throw spaghetti at the wall so that you guys like don't remember their original testimony, and like we just kind of dance around, and then like we'll get to the next witness and hopefully no one remembers anything. Like that's kind of what it communicates here. So it's like, which is not exactly a very confident position to be communicating, and may not really be that effective either.
Mrs. Goldsmith, did you ever see Jose or Mary Lou Menendez abuse their children in the time that you saw them?
No.
Sustained.
Did you see any activity by either Jose or Mary Lou Menendez that you considered abusive of their kids?
It's still vague, Your Honor. Psychological abuse, physical abuse.
Sustained.
Yeah.
Did you see anything with respect to any physical abuse of the defendants in this case by either Jose
I would object
or Mary Lou
on
Menendez?
speculation. I would object on speculation on the basis that like she's not an expert in like matters of abuse, whether psychological or physical or any of these other things. Like to have her come to like a massive conclusion on that, I don't know.
No.
Was it your impression, or was it your view that the defendants should have been disciplined more than they were disciplined by Mr. and Mrs. Menendez?
By discipline, do you mean, what exactly do you mean by discipline?
For example, I believe you related an incident where they were running around a restaurant.
Yes.
And making a lot of noise.
Yes.
And you thought that they should be disciplined, told to be quiet and stop running.
Yes.
And the Menendezes said, well, they're boys, it's okay. They're just being boys.
Yes.
I don't know how this helps the prosecution.
Now, if in their being rambunctious, the defendants sustained some kind of a scrape to their elbow or knee, would Mary Lou, would she clean up the wound and bandage it?
Yes.
You saw that?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that Mary Lou Menendez was a responsible mother, if not demonstrative?
She was not demonstrative.
Not openly affectionate?
No, she was not.
But would you say that she was a responsible mother?
False conclusion.
You understand the question?
Yes.
All right, I'll overrule the objection.
You can answer that, Mrs. Goldsmith.
She was responsible in that they were well clothed, they were well fed, they certainly got to all of their activities. They had many activities. She was very involved in getting them to all of their activities, very aware of what they were doing in school. She was also negligent in far as watching them. That would be my view of her.
She would let the boys run around.
Yes.
Now, did your contact with the family, the real close contact that you had on almost a daily basis, you indicated that it ended when they moved to New Jersey?
Yes.
That was back in 1977?
I believe it was 77 or 78.
Okay. And
78, I believe.
between 1978 and 1986, you would still have some minimal contact with the family?
Correct.
Christmas time, that sort of thing?
Correct.
Now, after 1986, you had very little contact with the defendants and the family?
Correct.
So you didn't know what was happening with the defendants from about 1986 on?
Correct.
Okay. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Redirect?
Mrs. Goldsmith, you were asked by Mr. Kuriyama about the fact that Mary Lou had to teach and you were not being critical of that because she had to work. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, when you two were teaching together, about what time would the work day end?
3 o'clock.
So she would have been free to go home to her infant son at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. Is that correct?
Correct.
And this was during the period of time in which she talked about placing her son at her mother-in-law's house full-time during the week. Is that correct?
Yes.
And just visiting him on the way to skiing and on the way back.
Right.
So she would have had from 3 in the afternoon until whatever time everybody went to bed at night to spend with her son.
Right.
This is one of the reasons why some women choose to go into teaching, is because of the scheduling, that it can be very friendly with having kids. While kids are in school, you're at work, you get off work, they get out of school at the same time. You're off for the summer, they're off for the summer. That's one of those. It's a very common thing to think about.
You talked about, I think Mr. Kuriyama asked you if Jose Menendez had a sense of humor.
Yes.
What was that at other people's expense sometimes? Was he the kind of person that sort of made fun of people?
Yes. Yes, it was.
And with regard to how good a friend Mary Lou and you were, was she the type of person to share secrets with you?
Overruled.
Mary Lou was a very private person. She rarely would confide personal things. Sometimes if she had had a few drinks, she might at that point be more open and reveal some more things.
But generally speaking,
no.
With regard to the picture that we have of the porch and the railing, was the floor of that porch ground level or was that elevated off of the ground?
It was elevated off of the ground.
And would it be fair to say that it was elevated at least your height off the ground and possibly more?
Do you mean the drop down?
From the floor of the porch, was it your height off the ground or higher off the ground, or was it just a few inches
On which
off the
side
ground?
of the porch?
The floor part that sticks out, that's out in the backyard.
The-
Let me point if I can.
I want to make sure I'm understanding it.
Should show you the picture.
Okay, we have the top railing
Mhm.
and the floor.
Right.
Did you have an idea what the distance between the top railing and the floor would be? This height or more or less?
Maybe that height.
Now, the distance, was this floor of the patio ground level or was it up off the ground? If you
It
were
was up
standing,
off the ground.
okay. Now, my question is, how far off the ground was it? If I was standing here, would it be at my
Oh,
height?
no, it'd be higher than that.
How much higher?
As I remember it, it would be quite a bit high. You couldn't reach up and grab it. You could not,
So, it would
to
be-
the best of my
so
recollection,
it would be at least 8 feet off the ground?
at least.
And then the railing would be another 3 to 4 feet above that. Is that correct? Off of the floor.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yes, okay, I got the picture.
Got the picture.
Okay, it took me a while, yes, okay.
so if a child is walking on this railing, they are now 12 feet off the ground? maybe?
Possibly, yes, yes.
Did you think that if someone fell off of that, they would kill themselves?
Rephrase the question.
Did you think it would be dangerous to fall
I
off?
viewed it as dangerous, yes.
Dangerous in terms of somebody might get a bruise, or did you think you could get more seriously injured than that?
More seriously injured than a bruise,
Like a broken leg or something?
yes.
Would you let your girls walk up there?
No, I would not.
Overruled, the answer will stand.
Would you not
I
let?
didn't hear the objection on that one, but there was also a question on the last objection before, and that was the objection was, I think, speculation as to whether or not she could answer about, Kitty sharing secrets with her. So it was something like speculation. I mean, obviously it's like there are circumstances where this witness might not have known how many secrets that Kitty was giving or sharing or not sharing, right? But it was just strange objection to make in that moment that her answer would have been her answer, and that would have, like, I don't know, it was in my opinion a dumb objection. So anyway,
Not let them work out there because they were just girls?
I resent that remark.
Good. All right.
I would not let them walk there because I thought it was dangerous for anyone to walk there,
So you think even boy children should be protected?
even boys.
thank you.
Overruled, the answer will stand.
Did you see
Thank you. I appreciate that statement after the cross-examination with a number of questions having some very sexist undertones.
that Lyle and Erik seemed to have a lot of injuries? A lot of,
Yeah, they were bruised up and cut up. Yes.
okay. I think Mr. Kuriyama asked you if Jose and Mary Lou wanted just what was best for their boys, and you said yes. What did you mean by best? What did Mary Lou and Jose mean by what was best for their boys?
They wanted Lyle and Erik to be number one in sports. They wanted them, Jose would often say he wanted the best for them. He wanted them to be in a good school where they could make good contacts so that they would have the right contacts in business to be successful.
And did you ever suggest the possibility that maybe their kids wouldn't be the best, wouldn't be number one?
Sustained.
Did either Jose or Mary Lou talk about what would happen if their children weren't the best?
Yes, Jose and I once, or more than once, Jose and I had conversations when Lyle and Erik were very young, and he would at that point be telling me how they were going to be number one and they would be the best at this whole scheduling that he had. And I would ask him, what would you do if they were not? What would you do if one of them had a learning disability? And he just said that would never happen, that his child could not have a learning problem, that they would be number one. And I said, but people do have children, just hypothetically speaking, what would you do? Would you be able to accept it? And he said he would never have a child like that it was not a possibility.
Yikes. Yikes, yikes, yikes. But also, by the way, this is a very good example of redirect. So in cross-examination, Kuriyama said, he asked that question of like, do you believe that Jose and Kitty wanted the best for their kids? Anyone could, I mean, the normal interpretation of that question is, like any parent wants the best for their kid. They want what is ultimately best for their child, for their health, for their wealth, for their well-being, like all of that. But here, so what, sometimes there's an instinct in those moments. If you are the opposing side, you're representing the party who brought this witness on direct, right? And then cross-examination, this is coming out. The instinct could be to object to that, right? To be like, no, like I want to fight on it, or for the witness to want to fight on it. But she said, no, that's correct. Then, however, the most proper thing to do in a lot of circumstances is to wait until redirect, like here, where I believe this is Jill Lansing who asks, well, what did you mean by that? You're able to go in, because on cross-examination, the witness is technically only supposed to give yes or no answers. But, where a yes or no answer is insufficient, then of course they can elaborate. But, the witness shouldn't really be fighting throughout cross-examination, at least not overly fighting. Giving pushback is one thing where pushback is warranted, but sometimes you can definitely get into that a little bit too much as a witness, because it might come across as you being biased. But what was I going to say? So but here on redirect, the defense has come in and said, okay, now what did you mean by that? Well, what do I mean by they wanted the best for them? They wanted quite literally the best of these things to be given to their children so that they could, be the most successful people out there, be number one, because being number one was the most important. It actually, it fits in like so perfectly with everything that we've heard before, which is why, and it comes across very confident from the defense too. So you can be like, oh, okay, yeah, that fits, that checks out.
I think Mr. Kuriyama asked you whether Jose had said that the most important thing in his life was his boys. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Did he say that in front of Mary Lou?
I'm sure he did, yes.
Mr. Kuriyama asked you if Mary Lou made you feel like you could do anything, you could accomplish anything. Did she try to create the same atmosphere for her children?
Yes.
And did she ever talk to you about what her feelings were if they couldn't do everything she thought they could do?
She just always said that they could.
Did you think that her expectations might be unrealistic?
Sustained.
Did you ever suggest to her that maybe they couldn't be everything she believed they could be?
Overall.
Could you just repeat the question, please?
Did you ever suggest to her that maybe her children wouldn't be able to be everything she thought they could be?
Yes.
And what was her reaction?
Her reaction was that if she set these goals for them, that they would reach them and that they could achieve it. I often said that maybe that it wasn't always necessary to be number one in everything. And she said it was. That was something that we would discuss at times.
It was important to be number one?
Yes, it was necessary. It had to be.
Was it everything to be number one? Was that the only thing that was important?
It certainly seemed to be, yes.
You were asked if the boy sustained an injury, if she would clean the wound for them. Would she console them or comfort them if they were injured, or would she just clean the wound?
She would just clean the wound.
Was this different from how you saw other people deal with injured children?
Objection relevant.
Sustained.
I knew it.
Was there anything about it that struck you as unusual to just clean the wound?
Objection 0 is irrelevant.
Sustained.
You were asked if she was let me go back. With regard to the restaurant incident and the children running around, did you observe Lyle and Erik to not be receiving control and direction from their parents with regard to their behavior?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Do you think that in terms of whether they were responsible parents, do you think that's responsible parenting to not correct your children in those areas?
I believe that that's the parent's job, that that's the parent's responsibility to do that, yes.
Do you think
to discipline and stop that kind of behavior.
Do you think you're doing your children a favor if you don't correct them in those areas?
Sustained.
Your Honor, the question was whether they were responsible parents.
Yeah, well, that's the question you had asked, but now you're on to something else.
Okay. Do you think that it is responsible parenting to not correct your children in areas like that?
Speculation and public opinion is irrelevant.
Well, this is what you brought out, Mr. Kuriyama. Objection overruled.
Do you remember the question now?
I think I do.
Okay.
I definitely believe that is certainly, if a child is going to learn discipline and control and how to behave in a public place, it is the parent that teaches the child that. The child doesn't just come naturally. It's something that has to be taught.
And my last question is with regard to whether they were responsible. You said that you felt that they were negligent in the way they watched their children. Did you feel that they endangered their children by failing to be protective of them and monitor their activities?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
I felt that they left them in dangerous situations, and yes, I did.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Anything else?
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, your next witness will be available at 1:30?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll be in recess then until 1:30, ladies and gentlemen. Don't discuss this case with anyone or form any final opinions about it. And we'll resume at 1:30 with both juries.
Okay, so this is
Juries are
a
not.
hearing now for the rest of this. So we are through today. Everything that we were going to get through, all of the witnesses. So this has been a really great session. Very illuminative. You know, now we're seeing from more coaches. We've heard from a teacher. We've got, you know, a teacher that was very, very fun to watch, actually. A lot of short and sweet bits of testimony today here, which is kind of nice sometimes. Like sometimes it's, you know, having focusing on one witness can be good because you go really in depth, but then sometimes it's nice to mix it up too. So once again, we heard from Stephen Mosner, that's the soccer coach for Erik and Lyle, talking about Jose's crazy antics on the sidelines of coaching soccer. Then we heard not coaching, but coaching his kids during soccer. Jessica Goldsmith, the school-aged family friend of theirs, testifying about Erik getting held back, and everyone in the Menendez family being like, "What are you talking about? He was always in that grade." What? You are mistaken. Everything that you seem to think about, like them not, him not being in your sister's class all this time. No, he's been there the whole time. Just crazy gaslighting. Then we heard from Robert Clouse, Lyle's tennis coach, who was told by Jose that he was basically just babysitting him until he started Princeton. And then that was it for tennis. And the decision was done and done. And there was no discussion about it. None allowed whatsoever. Then Patricia Cross, the delightful teacher from Princeton Day School, who was Lyle's 6th grade history teacher, and who testified that Lyle wasn't doing so well in school, and that Kitty and Jose were very accusatory towards her for that, basically pinning it on her, like it was somehow her fault that Lyle was essentially failing. Like she said that they were like below average grades and like seemingly like kind of average, but below average grades. But they were literally the lowest grades that she could give a student, because they were on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being like A pluses, 5s being Fs. And as a policy, the school did not give 5s. So he got 4s from her. So, craziness. Yes, this was, I believe, yeah, that was Robert Clouse. The don't F with my son's future sort of threat that he perceived. And then finally, Faith Goldsmith, who we just heard from, who is Jessica's mother, confirming a lot of similar stuff that we've heard so far. Just a lot of like wild stuff. Hey, and Savala, good to see you in the chat. We're just wrapping up here for today, but I'm happy to see you drop by. So yeah, interesting day today. If you guys want to see a recap, there will be a recap on my Instagram account. It'll be up to a 2-minute reel, 1 or 2 minute reel, probably closer to 2 minutes because it's hard for me to whittle it down. But other than that, I've got at least 1 more video coming out this week, probably a second one. I'm really trying to push for it. And then also for those of you that are members of Bite Club, I'll see you on Friday for the members only live stream. So with that, thank you to everyone for joining me today. This has been such fascinating testimony, interesting every week. I am really enjoying this series, and especially thank you to the folks in the chat that are having these wonderful discussions about, everything that we're watching. And thank you to the mods for always ushering in wonderful discussion and making sure that everybody, when we agree, when we disagree, that we're all being respectful and welcoming to everybody in the chat. So, okay, with that, I'll see you. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday and a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next video.